Ooh, I almost got this. Can somebody tell me how to work this stage bullshit? Because I've got either one of all faces blown up and the rest of everybody's kind of down in the corner, and it's kind of annoying.
I had to open the chat on the side, and if you open the chat and like pull it out, you can like kind of angle. I don't know how you have it set up in OBS, but you can kind of angle it. So I mean, I think I got it angled okay.
Yeah, for some reason, if we're all in the subcategory, we're all now in a 4-block instead of a 3-block or a 2-block. And I don't know who made the stage system, but it's fucking awful.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's kind of cool.
I really question your sanity.
Oh yeah, you should definitely do that.
Oh, here we go. Unfocus this person. There we go.
Yeah, that's not even a problem. Question my sanity every day of the week.
Probably good to go. Anyway. Oh, so I have got a real promo for you guys. I just got it done finished because Majin pissed me off. So give me just a second. I posted a fucking. I'm like, wow, dude. Like, I feel the love. I feel it. So, anyway, side chat for this.
Pretty sure Majin's in this Discord.
He might be. Video.
Or he doesn't know I made a new Discord, and we'll figure that out.
Does anyone know what Ginger's health concerns are? I didn't know she was having issues.
No.
That's unfortunate.
She has issues here and there.
Yeah, it's too bad.
I gotcha. That's how you do a fucking promo, by the way.
That looks good. That looks real
You
good.
damn right it does. I had to break out my old skills, but I got it.
But
that's a great title. Your title's better than
the title of this promo with all of our faces on it. AI porn and nitrogen death. That's underneath all of our faces. You realize that, right?
Yeah, I do.
Want clicks? That's how you do it.
Exactly. Like you got to embrace the memes a little bit, or else you don't get that viewership. Which, believe me, I don't usually like going content brain, but it's still there.
Give the impression of AI porn and nitrogen.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, looking at it.
I love consuming AI porn with my nitrogen mask.
Hey, don't worry, we're all smiles on the picture, so we're good.
These faces are amazing, though.
It's
like some people are smiling. Oh God.
Like I at one point when I was doing my own promos and shit, like I had actually collected like good photos from most people, but then there's I've known Fairy Queen like 2 weeks. Like Corey's actually an old one. Majin I just got, of course I don't have Lethace because he's the moderator. I don't usually put the moderator in there.
Just don't worry about me.
I'm still waiting for Lactoid to give me a good photo because it's like this man looks handsome as hell on fucking stream, and then what does he do? Send me one of the most rough shot pictures he has where he's drunk.
Like that picture. I probably was drunk, but I like that picture. That's
you totally were. I'm just like, you gotta send me. It's like he's like, dude. He's like, I'm just drunk, dude. I'm like, all right, whatever. All right, I need to start up my stream. So, I can put it in the side chat too. Yeah, fuck you, Majin. That's how you do a real promo.
I was a little thinner back then too, actually.
It's all about their people's branding, man. I'd rather have their branding than photos. Some of y'all, never mind. I can't have Lactoid's Gerber baby face ruining the promo. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, now I got a beard now, okay?
Jesus.
And a different angle, so I don't look so young. Okay, I'm working on it.
If I have to choose between the V and the I'm joking.
Already off to a great start.
Hell yeah!
All right, everyone's here though, right?
Yep, we are all good. Y'all ready to roll?
Let's fucking hit it.
All right.
We don't have to wait till 9 o'clock to get this started.
For once, isn't that great?
Oh yes. Right, I actually had a whole new soundboard for you too on this one. Oh wait, there's actually music streaming in here? What the hell?
You can.
No one told me.
It's one of those things. So
I can't do the soundboard. Fuck.
There's no soundboard in here.
I hate you so much. I had a perfect one for this. I had a perfect one for this.
One of these days.
You got
right,
one.
welcome.
Bender Rodriguez going to scream at you. Go ahead.
Welcome, one and all, to the Minds of the Ecclesia panel, AI and Execution Edition. With me, I have some fine guests who will be introducing themselves right now, starting with Corey.
Well, first of all, how dare you refer to me as fine, but I'll take it. The slander. But yeah, I appreciate always being invited on. I'm looking forward to getting into it with these familiar and fine faces. And I also super appreciate the increase in the Canadian presence with Lactoid also being here as well. But yeah, as usual, great topics. You can find me on Twitch, Corey Campbell 84, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube. It's Corey Campbell. Yeah, thank you so much.
Hey,
Awesome.
guys.
Very clean.
Hey guys, you can find me at Fairy Queen's Cottage on YouTube, and you can find me at Fairy.
Did the sound just go out, or is it me?
Oh, can you hear me?
I mean,
I can hear.
I think it's you.
No, I just lost sound altogether. What's the deal?
You can't hear me?
No,
Hello?
we can all hear you.
He can't.
His
That is
headset-
odd.
can Fairy Queen hear us?
Continue with your intro.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Technical difficulties already.
Maybe
Good,
ran out of
Leafy, can you
battery.
hear me?
No. Looks like he's investigating. Might have to give him a second.
Well, as long as he's doing that, hi viewers, my name is Fairy Queen, and you can find me at Fairy Queen's Cottage at YouTube and at Fairy _Queen on Twitter.
Nice. Good Lactoid.
Nice. It's yeah.
The
Hi,
triple underscores.
I'm Lactoid.
There it goes.
Can you hear me, Leafy? He can't.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Can you hear Fairy Queen?
Fairy Queen, go ahead and do your intro one more time, because when my headphones went out, everything went out. So,
Hi, Fairy Queen. You can find me at Fairy Queen's Cottage on YouTube. There, I already did it again. So.
awesome. Lactoid.
I'm Lactoid. You can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks.
Awesome. And with us for the first time, Majin.
Hey, I'm Majin. You can find me on Twitch as Majin BMac. Nice meeting y'all.
And the man, the myth, the legend, Tiberius D.
Greetings, everyone. It's been a pleasure once again. I'm a little bit hyper in this particular episode because Majin decided to piss me off before the stream began. So I'm out for a little bit of blood, but I'm also super excited to be with some of the most beautiful people on Twitch. It's a pleasure to be here. We got some good topics. Let's kick some ass.
Oh, let's start the party with topic 1. An illicit AI deepfake of Taylor Swift has been circulating and has caused a response from the White House. Have we waited too long to respond to the growing technology, and is there a rational way to take action on this? The White House has said an explicit doctored image of singer Taylor Swift circulating on social media is very alarming and has urged Congress to take legislative action against the phenomenon. The sexually explicit image depicting the pop star, which appears to have been developed by artificial intelligence, were widely shared on social media on Thursday, in one of the first cases of so-called deepfake pornography going viral. At a news briefing on Friday, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, said, "This is very alarming, and so we're going to do what we can to deal with the issue." What should be done about this issue? Go ahead, start with Corey.
Well, so I sort of have, I guess, maybe two answers of like, something should be done, but like whether something can actually be realistically done that's like enforceable or effective, I think is a little bit of an open question to me. What I will say is like, this is not my idea. I'll give credit to my fellow Canadian Lactoid of like putting a watermark on deepfake generated whatever images or pornography. Like, yeah, that let's say is whatever, not forgeable. I think it's a step in the right direction. Whether, again, that's actually enforceable, I sort of like view it as, child sexual abuse imagery of like it's just rampant online and proliferates. And despite all the laws and regulation that we try to pass, it just seems to get worse and worse. And I'm concerned that it'll follow the same trajectory with deepfake, where, I think there's a conversation to be had about privacy that I don't think people tend to really want to have that conversation, especially when it comes to child sexual abuse imagery. But yeah, I think, at least to me, it will boil down to privacy. But I'll leave it there for now.
All right. Thank you, Fairy Queen.
I agree with what the Corey said in the latter half of what he mentioned. I do think that this question about AI porn really boils down to a question of privacy, and I think that and this is something that I want to get into more tonight. I'm curious to hear if people who are who think that AI porn is basically no different than simply you picking up a pen and drawing it. I'd like to hear like what they think the actual distinction is between you sitting and drawing a picture and you picking up and taking an actual photograph of the person. And what is the actual, and we'll get into that later, but that's a question that I'd like to get into. But generally speaking, I think that it violates your right to privacy, and I think that it should be criminalized unless like you gain explicit consent from the person from whom the AI porn is created.
Ooh, that's interesting. Lactoid.
Yeah, this is a topic that I've discussed before. My position thus far has not changed. I have no problem with AI-generated pornography as long as it's clear that it's AI-generated. I think in the case of Taylor Swift, it's even less of a problem because I don't think that even without the watermarks, I don't really think anybody thinks they're real. I think everybody does think that they're AI-generated. As a principle, sure, they should have watermarks on them as well. But I think this is kind of an overhyped issue a little bit in the sense of the White House is freaking out about it. The UK is passing laws or whatever. When in reality, restricting this is restricting freedom of art and being able to create images. I think the drawing comparison is 100% apt. We're going to tomorrow start restricting artists' ability to draw their favorite celebrity naked. Am I allowed to imagine my favorite celebrity naked? Truly Orwellian.
Orwellian, excellent. Majin.
Man, my take on this is switching in real time because of Lactoid. That's crazy. I guess I was like a hard stance. I think it's a little weird if you want to create AI pornography of people. But when I look at history, right, what's the difference of people drawing art or fan art of people or people they idolize and stuff like that? You'll constantly see content creators, like especially if they do stuff like OnlyFans and stuff like that. Now, granted, Taylor Swift isn't doing anything like that. It's a little bit inappropriate for people to be doing stuff of her, but understandable because she is who she is. I mean, doesn't make it right though, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you constantly see people like when there's a content creator or cosplayer, like somebody will do tasteful art of that person, like maybe in the nude or something like that. Hell, we can even go back to the way back in the using a movie reference here, but the Watchmen, right? When that one, the lady, the older her mother, who was the Spectre, I think was beforehand, she was looking at a little nudie magazine of her being drawn by somebody else. I think we found this in art over history or over the our time span, right? So is this just the new age version of that? And if it is, do we really have a problem with it? Or is this just a sensationalized thing, because we try to blow everything up?
All right. Tiberius.
Yeah, so last Wednesday, we had a little bit of a conversation about AI and how it's intervening in politics. And, I pretty much put it out there that AI is absolutely out of control, and a lot of people are not taking it as seriously as what they should be. And not 24 hours later, this particular event happens, and I keep hearing this ringing in my ear that I consistently have been hearing since then. It goes something like, vindication is on deck here. Like, okay, if you really want to put this in perspective, think about this in politics. We can now do AI voice. We can now do AI interpretations of how people look. I talked about the Donald Trump versus Biden, kind of thing going on where it's a live stream. You could clip it, and a lot of people would totally believe it because it's getting pretty damn good. And now we have this particular incident. Now imagine it's you. You're not a super famous celebrity that can just ask, a major corporations and institutions to take down all this shit. Somebody's trying to do it as a revenge porn, because you pissed them off or what have you. Somebody's actually just going after you to make you look bad. Or, think of any reason somebody might want to go after you. This is now on deck. And what recourse do you have? Fucking none. Yeah, this shit is absolutely a problem, and I just love the fact that literally the day after I preach about how terrible it is, it actually happens. Sorry, Taylor, you don't deserve that. But people need to wake up. Every time that I keep saying we've got a major issue on deck, we have to wait until something bad happens instead of listening to me and actually having a conversation about it. So thank you very much. I'm right again.
All right. So in the spirit of Rule 34, and we all know what the internet is for, let's go ahead and open up this conversation.
Well, go ahead, Fairy Queen.
I'm going to ask the panel, like before we get into AI porn specifically, does everyone here think that revenge porn should be criminalized, or do some of you think it should not be criminalized?
I think it should.
I think
Should be criminalized, yeah.
I think it depends.
Why?
Not necessarily. It depends if the pornography was consensually acquired or not. Like, for example, if you let somebody record you and there's no preconditions on whether or not they can share it, then I don't see what would be wrong with sharing.
You're so lawyer brain, dude.
Oh, on this topic, I'm hyper lawyer brained on this topic, Tiberius. You're gonna hate me, but
On every topic.
I'm gonna.
No, I get it because of why. Like, I get that, but on the other side of that, I fucking hate you for it.
I'm gonna keep
100%.
going. I'm gonna keep going.
No.
I mean, let's think about this, right? So, like, if I'm in public, there's no expectation of privacy, right? And the reason there's no expectation of privacy is because I'm out in public, right? And I'm walking around. If you trade nudes without the expectation of privacy, let's say, I don't know, let's say I were to shoot a porn video and then take the porn video down, but people keep sharing that porn video. Is that revenge porn?
Hmm.
Under some definitions, maybe, but I don't think it is.
I don't know.
I'm just thinking. I'm trying to draw the analogy. My science is not like me not whatever.
He's actually thinking about what he says before he says it. You give him credit.
Well, but when that happens, that means I take the dub. That's
But
how it works.
I don't see the connection, or at least I might be just too stupid to see the connection of like how is you filming a porn movie, putting it up, and then you taking it down. How is that analogous to revenge porn?
So my understanding of revenge porn is you have pornography of somebody that you then share. And so and assume it, like, the assumption is you're sharing it when they don't necessarily want you to share it. I think this is why I said it depends. Like, the real question is, like, was there a reasonable expectation of privacy when you recorded the porn with your girlfriend? Did you say, like, I'm not going to share this with anybody, this is just our thing? If you share it after that, then I think it's wrong, right? But if there's not that expectation, then I don't think it's necessarily wrong. And I think that this fits in perfectly with AI porn because it doesn't even involve the other person. It's just an AI representation of them.
But at least for me, your example, again, maybe I'm just not understanding it, or too stupid to understand it. That's also possible. But like for
That's
me,
not true.
you publishing pornography, so you upload online. To me, that's like you going out in public in terms of like the reasonable expectation of like privacy, of like by you pretty much stepping outside your door, publishing the porn online. There's no expectation of privacy, and so at any point, someone can just like whatever copy it. Where as opposed to with the porn shot in a bedroom, you've never stepped outside the public domain, and so you're lured into sort of a false expectation, maybe a false, but an implicit expectation that you're never out in the public.
Well, that's the question, right? That's why, like, is there the expectation? And I'm willing to allow some room there for like implication. So, but let's get rid of like the implication completely. I video myself having sex with somebody, and I even say like, can I do whatever with this video? And she says yes, right? Then we would all agree that me sharing that's not revenge porn, even if, like, let's say a week later she asked me to not share it. I can still share it because when I took the video, she agreed that I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah, like if it's that situation that you've outlined, like you don't have any control, like it's hard. It's sort of like once the cat is out of the bag. The same thing with your porn analogy. Like once out of the bag, you can't undo. Just like with AI overall. Like once it's there, it's really hard to rein it in. That's why. I think it's just like that first step of like where can you actually make something public? And I think a guiding principle of like implicitly a guiding principle of like unless you have explicit permission to like publish something, you should. I think the default should be you don't have the permission to publish it unless you film something in public.
Right.
Okay, so let me ask the question. So let's just assume like we take like the type of revenge porn where somebody explicitly says, where either they don't explicitly say don't share it, right? Which is very common with often people when they're trading nudes. They often do not explicitly say do not share this or do share this, right? They often, there's simply a shared, at least on one side, an agreement that it won't be shared, right? In that case, do you think that that type of revenge porn should be criminalized? And if so, then why? And on what basis?
You got him, Fairy Queen. That silence means you won.
Fair.
As we
Hey,
say.
hey, hey,
Oh
hey,
my
hey,
God.
hey.
I love that people actually think before they talk on this panel. This is
So
wonderful.
the reason why it's wrong, the only reason why it's wrong, is because you made a contract with somebody that you wouldn't share it in order to receive the product. Without that contract, there's no problem with you doing whatever you want with your property. And I would agree that that photograph or that video is your property. It's just got a limitation on it, where it's like if you buy a car and the guy who's selling the car says, look, I'll only sell you this car if you don't drive it into Georgia. That's the contract. You don't get to drive it into Georgia now because that's what you agree to in order to buy the car in the first place.
But oftentimes,
even without the.
But
Go
often,
ahead, please.
but as like we stated before, oftentimes I would agree with you that there's often an implied contract, but it's not explicit, right? The vast majority of people, like when they trade nudes, photographs, or videos with each other, they do not sit down and explicitly say, hey, please do not share this with anyone. It's simply assumed by both parties that it won't be shared. Do you think that it's immoral to share it under those circumstances where it's not clear, where there is no explicit conversation?
I think implied contracts are a thing, and implied agreements are a thing. So I'm leaning towards, it's probably wrong just on that basis. I would prefer the contracts to be explicit, though, and if we developed a culture in which like the expectation was a explicit contract to not share it, if that was the expectation, then that would be the standard, and that should be the standard.
All right. I got to tag you on this part. Like, forget the contract. Like, you actually think revenge porn in any way, shape, or form is ethically sound? It's like, yeah, that's totally an ethical thing to do.
Maybe a little bit grimy, I suppose, but like, is it something that I criminalize? That's because right now that's what we're talking about. Are we going to criminalize AI porn? That's the question, right? And so, do I think it's maybe distasteful? Am I going to look at naked pictures of Taylor Swift? I don't actually. There are celebrities that I might, okay, but not Taylor Swift, is what I'm saying, okay? I'm just saying.
Like, no, dude, I'm just trying to pull this down into like a thing of like you or me, right? You share a dirty pic, or let's just say I did, and all of a sudden, like the ex fucking rules it out. Like you think that's ethically sound at all? Like, hey, I did that in like in the comfort and confidence of like my own bedroom, and now all of a sudden you're fucking airing all that shit out. Like, that's kind of rude. Like, that's kind of supposed to be a little bit of a fun surprise, for some folks. Like, what are we doing here? Like you actually are okay with this just from the get?
In a vacuum in which there's no explicit or implicit contract, I have no problem with it.
I fucking hate
it's my
you.
property. It's my property. It's on my phone. It's on my phone. I recorded it, okay, using my battery life, using my data plan, and I recorded it, and then I uploaded it. How is this not my property?
Ladies and gentlemen,
if I go out and take pictures in nature, like the bird, like come on, no,
Oh my God.
Lactoid, shoes on the other foot, right? You got a girlfriend and she's into the recording thing, right? And she records all your little sexual escapades that you go through, right? So there's y'all break up, right? And she recorded every single one, right? And she has one she particularly likes where you decided to do a little dance, right? And then you climbed on top of her and you was a five pump chump. You know what I'm saying? Just, some shit like that. And that's the video she wants to decide to load to X Hamster. You cool with that?
Lactoid will have a contract for every relationship that.
So I would have the contract in advance that would dictate that. Second of all,
this brother's single. He just
that's never gonna happen. Hold on, that's never gonna happen anyway. Okay, I would have nothing to be scared of or ashamed if that did come out. Okay, I'm good. I'm good, Majin. Don't worry about it. Of course. But it
does happen to the best of us.
Here's a good way of like I think photography in this case is actually identical to drawing as well. to answer Fairy Queen's initial question, if I go in and I sit down and I draw somebody naked, if the expectation, like explicitly, is one, don't share this drawing, okay, fine, don't share it. If the implicit expectation is like contract is don't share this drawing, if this is the understanding between the two people, then perhaps don't share the drawing. But like if that's not established or that's not reasonably established, you should be able to share the naked drawing, just like you should be able to share the naked photographs. Same concept.
Okay, so here's my next question. Okay, do you think that voyeurism should be criminalized?
In terms of like trespassing onto someone else's property and watching them, or like looking at
no.
some people on the side of the road?
Okay. So just to be really explicit, so there's a peeping Tom. There's a naked woman in her window, and she's stupid enough to leave the curtain open, and you sit in your window in the privacy of your own home, and you look at this naked person as she's bathing in her. Do you think that? And then she finds out that you've been watching her for the past 6 months. Should that person go to jail as a peeping Tom or not?
No, not from your own window. If you're naked in front of your own window within sight of another window or the street or a public place, I think that arguably, I think that's actually in most places that's actually a crime. You can be charged with indecent exposure if you're naked in front of your own window in public view of the street.
What if now? Okay. So there was a case that I was looking at previously, which talked specifically about I'm not sure who was it. What was it? It was it was a high school teacher in London, Ontario. And what he did was he had a camera where he would take pictures of his students' breasts and butts as they were walking down the hall. And he would install, and they were in public, right? They were in a school, they were in a public facility, right? Do you think that person did anything wrong by choosing to do that?
Absolutely not. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Oh my god!
Really?
So wait, Lactoid. So have you seen? You probably haven't seen, but have you seen the movie Back to the Future?
Oh, dude, I thought I was gonna meme. Okay.
Please don't disappoint me with this answer.
Is that the one where he gets with his own mom or something? I've read like
I hate you
Wikipedia.
so much.
But yeah,
how do you not know this?
There's a scene in there where George McFly, when he goes back in time, like is like peeping. Well, that's what he's called. He's called a peeping Tom of like his future wife, because like she's getting changed, pretty much in front of a window, and George McFly is up in a tree with like binoculars. So you think the woman in the window, they're the criminal, and like they're not the peeping Tom.
Well, again, like up in a tree, is there a reasonable expectation of privacy if the only way you can look in a window is from climbing up like their tree? Well, first of all, you're trespassing by climbing up the tree to begin with. That's
no. So he's on the other side of the road, okay, and like he's only climbing the tree to get.
That's fine then. Yeah.
He's only climbing the tree to get a better view of like you can see it from the sidewalk.
Is
but,
the tree
he wants like that, right?
Is the tree public property? That's the question.
I hate that this is his qualifier.
But
I was gonna do. I was gonna meme into the Little Nicky reference, like the fucking asshole who is in the tree and then drops dead at the beginning of the movie. I mean, outside of the trespass, because I think you would totally go on board with that. But just would you even condemn that even outside of the trespass, where the dude's even in this lady's tree, fucking watching in on her
in her tree?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a major problem. Like, first of all, it's my tree, so fuck you, get off my tree.
There it is.
But second of all, if you have to climb up my tree in order to see me naked, then obviously, like, because I have the expectation that nobody's going to trespass in my tree, now it's a violation of my privacy, right? But if I, like, for example, Tiberius, you wouldn't possibly think that, like, let's say I'm up, like, press my balls up against, like, my front kitchen window, and I'm, like, really, like, rubbing it in. And then, like, the Google van drives by for Google Maps, and it takes a picture of my balls, like, in high def. Do you think that I have the right to sue Google because they took a picture of my balls? Or is it my fault for pressing my balls up against my kitchen window? I think it's my fault.
I love this is a reference, but I'll actually dig into this. I don't think you should be able to sue. I would done. I think you shouldn't be able to sue because there is a level where you're culpable on this one. However, I think it definitely has like a social ramification on Google. Like they gotta blur that shit out. They gotta send another fucking vehicle down the road. Like, I mean, there's just an etiquette thing here. Like, social conservative Tiberius, here we go. But like, there's shit you just shouldn't fucking do, and this is one of them.
So yeah, to
Authoritarian.
crystallize it. So first of all, I put the scene.
Dude, did you see the data values results recently? Like, we've confirmed this. Authoritarian right. Sorry.
I put the scene from Back to the Future in the group chat. I'm curious of your perspective on it. And like, yeah, just to crystallize it, you think like whatever, like an upskirt with a cell phone in public, that's not criminal or like unethical.
Hold on. If you're like, if the skirt is like covering from public view part of your body, I think that's different than like direct view, like no expectation of privacy. I can just see your cleavage. Obviously, we all agree I should be able to take pictures of like women's cleavages, right? Like, and then save it to my phone and upload it if I want to.
Wait. Hang on. Wait, why though? Why is it not okay? Like, I don't think it's okay, right, to put a cell phone, like a camera on your shoe, right? Or to install, a camera in the shower head or in a toilet, right? To take pictures of unsuspecting people, right? But why is that wrong from your perspective, right?
Well, it's again, like, it's a reasonable expectation of privacy. Like, they aren't like, the reason why we have this like reasonable expectation of privacy is like there's this underlying implicit contract that we keep mentioning of like, generally speaking, if you intend to provide something that's meant to be private, it like that's attached to providing this to you, right? You're not allowed to share XYZ thing. That's the whole agreement that we have. But we also, like, if you're acting in such a way where it's obvious that you're sharing it with the whole world, right? Or at the very least, not obvious that you're intending to keep it private completely, then that reasonable expectation of privacy is not there. Otherwise, news agencies or Google Maps simply wouldn't be able to operate, right? So, like, again, let's say I'm walking out in public naked and the Google Maps van drives by. Does anybody here think Google Maps is doing like a crime by photographing me naked? I mean, I think it's pretty. It's different than upskirting, right? Obviously.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that you mentioned earlier that you don't see there as being a distinct difference between drawing and between the actual photograph,
Yes.
which I actually would agree with in this instance, right? But here's my question. This is where it gets tricky, right? So we have a public bathroom, let's say, and now let's say they don't have the camera in the shower head. They don't have the camera on their shoe. They don't have the camera in the toilet. Instead, you have a weird person who has a two-way mirror, right? Where they sit on the other side of the mirror and they draw a highly photorealistic picture of the person undressing. Do you think that's different or the same?
It'd be the same. It'd be the same as a camera. Like, drawings and pictures, I would consider to be the exact same for any kind of analysis here. No matter how clear.
Right, but the point of that is then that picture, even if it's a drawn picture, even if I'm sitting down and I'm drawing the image, right? Do you think that would be a violation of a reasonable expectation of privacy?
If it's like a drawing of, like, the concept is like fruit of the poison tree, right? So, like, if you're doing something wrong, like if you're violating somebody's privacy directly, like the products that stem from that that explicit violation of privacy is fruit of the poison tree. It is like the result of a criminal activity, and we have an interest in criminalizing the product of criminal activity in order to dissuade the original criminal activity. So if I draw somebody naked because I'm looking at them naked and I draw what I see, that should be criminal, but it should not be criminal to draw somebody naked based on what I think they might look like naked, because that's a creation in my head and I own my own thoughts.
Right. But like, would you agree though that like with the technology that we have currently, which is highly realistic, it can make a pretty sincere guess as to what you probably look like without your clothes?
It would be a guess, right? There's no way to know. There's no way the AI could know if I had a mole like on my stomach or not. They just can't.
Well, to kind of get to the crux of the argument, this deepfake is only using her head for the most part and putting it on somebody else's body. So should somebody be able to take your head and put it on some AI doing whatever God knows what?
And that's where I get oh, my bad.
No, you haven't spoken.
Then that's where I get a little weird about that, because no, in essence, it's not. We've done parodies forever, right? Like where we'll take something goofy and put the head all supersized and maybe make their mouth move and say some shit for parody purposes. And this is where it gets a little iffy, right? So if we do have like laws that go after, like, taking somebody self-image and putting it on something for either like monetary gains or parodies or explicit stuff, then we lose out on the funny shit. Like when we get to see George W. Bush in South Park with the little funny mouth saying all the crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? We don't get that type of stuff. So it is a very scary slope, I guess.
I won't go as far as criminalizing it, but I definitely find it rude as hell.
I'm curious, Blacktoid, what your position is like. So are you a single party consent person when it comes to audio recordings?
That's really that one's a very good question. And I really want to say yes. But I can see how that might be inconsistent. I don't disagree. I think it depends. It depends on what the recording is for, honestly, right? Like if the recording is one that like demonstrates
it's on my phone with my data.
No, I hear
my
it.
battery.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's my property, my whatever. But I would even include. Okay, here's my kind of off the hip fucking opinion that I think is probably correct. In the same concept of the porn here, which is that generally speaking, I would require it be a two-party consent if the conversation was expected to be private. However, if you're recording or if using the recording is critical for like a legal reason, like proving that you did or didn't do something, then it should be allowed to be used and not be illegal. So for example, if like you record like yourself having sex with somebody, and then let's say later they accuse you of sexual assault, but the video shows that's obviously not true, you should be allowed to use this video to prove your innocence. Same thing with the audio recording, right? If somebody's lying about something legally relevant and you have an audio recording showing that they're lying, then you should be allowed to use that. But other than like for a legal reason, I think the interest there is like pretty high. That's the only reason I'm putting in this exception. But otherwise, like if you have a private conversation with somebody and they have like a recording of your voice, then they shouldn't be allowed to use that. But then the question is, should they be allowed to tell people what they think that you said?
Yeah, so I guess my scenario, because I'm thinking of like even just like a business meeting. Can I go into my business meeting, record the audio? Because I've actually sort of done that for my own personal whatever purposes, for my own personal record. But like, yeah, is someone allowed to just go into a business meeting, not tell anyone they're recording the audio of this meeting, and then just like walk out and like publish it?
Yeah, I'm leaning on no, but that's a good question. With audio and visual, I'm curious as to why I'm feeling such a strong difference there, but I guess I would have to just until I see it like a notable difference, I think I would have to just be consistent and say that I don't think that you should be allowed to do that. I think that if the expectation is that nobody's going to record a meeting and then you record it anyway, you've done something wrong. Yeah.
But you think when it comes to like recording sexual activity, like unless there's explicit consent, there's no implied privacy?
I even said there can be implied privacy when it comes to sexual activity, right? And so, yeah, if that expectation is implicit enough, like, sure, I would agree that you shouldn't be able to share that pornography.
Well, what do you mean by implicit enough? Like, so I guess I should ask you: is the default of like any recording of any sexual activity, like in a bedroom or whatever in a private area? The default is like, yes, this is private and is not publishable.
For me, it's going to be entirely case dependent. It's going to be dependent on all the actions of both parties, whether or not it seems clear that both parties intended for this to be private as opposed to potentially public, right? So if you are like in a bedroom recording something with the windows, like with the blinds closed, and you say, look, I closed the blinds. I didn't want anybody to see. It was just me and him. We've known each other for a very long time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like this was like what we had. I think you can build a case for there being an expectation of privacy here. But if you record yourself having sex with somebody on the side of the road as cars are passing by, there's no expectation of privacy. You should be able to share that video wherever you want.
I'm curious. Like, I don't know if you're aware, but sometimes sex occurs outside the bedroom, of like in a living room with like no blind. Like maybe not like, the full wall of a window, but like, a small window that like, yeah, you might have to get a particular angle to see in, but it's large or whatever. It's like whatever, 90%, 80% private. So like in that scenario, like if those two people are having sex, there is no expectation of privacy.
If the window's large enough, then it could lean towards there not being a reasonable expectation of privacy.
What's your dimensions?
Well, think about it, right? Like
just
if you're
about to
banging
ask
like with a big giant glass window again to the street where like Google Maps can pick you up fucking your wife, then obviously no, like you're doing something. But
Or
like
dog.
or dog, right? Whatever you happen to
What if
choose.
it's one of these modern condos that all the walls to the external building are glass?
Yeah, don't have sex there
And you-
if you don't want to be recorded.
Okay, Fairy Queen, you were going to say something?
So I know your lawyer brain, but I would like to know for you, like regardless of what, I'd like to know like where you think this reasonable expectation of privacy comes from. So it sounds like it could boil down to three different things. It's a property argument, right? So you can't take this piece of information away from me because I own it, right? That's why you can't like steal somebody's like IP address, like somebody's like personal information, their social security number. It's because it's my property, right? It belongs to me. So if you steal that from me, you're stealing my property. In which case, we're going to get into the whole conversation about do you own your likeness? I know we've had conversations before where you don't think that you do, right? And presumably, even like in the shower and the camera, you own the building, you own the camera, you own like the mirrors, right? So it can't stem from a property argument. So that can't be the reason like why you have a reasonable expectation. And I don't think that it can be violation of consent either, because we've had conversations. I know we've had conversations before. That's my take, right? Because I think that if you are looking or if you are taking a picture of somebody humiliating or hurting themselves or in a position where they don't want to be recorded and you choose to record it and you choose to upload it, you are violating that person's consent, which I know is a contention that you and I have had before. So that leaves us with the thing that we've been talking about, which is the implied contract, right? So all the actions of both parties have to, so there's an implicit contract. But again, I think that what Corey asked earlier, okay, like how implicit is implicit, right? Like what are the barriers around this contract that makes it implied? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but like basically like how could I go ahead and justify that an implied contract actually exists to prove that I have a reasonable expectation of privacy? So the school example is the good one, right? So those students, when they were walking throughout the school, right? Presumably because they're in a school, there is an implied contract between the teacher and the student that the teacher, because they are an instructor, isn't going to perv on their students like as they're walking down the hallway, right? There is supposedly an implied contract.
Anywhere.
But especially in a school building, right? Like, do you think that this implied contract does not exist like outward in society? So if I'm walking down the street, for instance, even if I do have my boobs pushed up to the moon, right? Is there not an implied contract between me and between the person on the sidewalk not to pervily take a photo of me as I'm walking down the street? And if not, then why not?
The working definition, I just wrote it down. I think when we're talking about implied contracts, in this case, it should be whether or not both parties believed or should have believed that the content was not going to be visible to other parties. That should have believed is going to be part of the case-by-case analysis. So if you push your boobs up against a window to the public street, I don't think the person who's standing on the side of the road who looks over and sees that, I don't believe it's reasonable for them to believe that this was only going to be between you, like, her and you, like this stranger relationship, because it's a public street. There could be anybody on the public street. It's not restricted access. Anybody can go on the public street. Anybody can view this. But like in a bedroom in which the windows are covered, well, there's more of like a basis there now to believe that this is only going to be with that one other person. Now there is kind of this reasonable expectation of privacy. Where the line gets a little bit gray is like, okay, now you have a window facing the street, but like it's a very small window in which nobody can really see in. Okay, well then there could be like a reasonable expectation of privacy, but the larger the window gets, the weaker the argument gets that that you should have believed that this was content that was not going to be visible to any other party. I think that's the standard that I want to run with here.
So I'm curious. So with my example of audio recordings, and so does it change of like, so I brought up the example of business meeting. So if I'm whatever at like a food court in the mall and I'm recording like a conversation between like me and my friend.
Yeah.
Like,
because anybody can walk by and record that. So that if you record your friend like in a food court, no problem with that. A private business meeting with the doors closed and soundproof glass, that's probably not okay.
Okay, so I'm curious. I'm going to try to push the limits. So what about virtual meetings? Can I record the audio of a virtual meeting? Is there any reasonable expectation of privacy there?
I think I think probably yes, unless like it's going to be explicitly said don't record that, because
why? Because no one should expect any privacy on the internet.
Right. So you shouldn't expect it, which is why it needs to be explicit. Right. Once somebody tells you do not share this, well, now there is the expectation that you're not going to share this because they told you.
For a virtual meeting, you're a two-party consent for audio recording. And then in a conference, what about a conference room? A conference room is that single party?
Depends on the conference room, right? If it's a conference room that like everybody down the hall can hear you, sure. If it's a conference room that's soundproof with the doors closed, then no.
What if it? Well, that's the thing. Like, what if it's like just a wooden door, right?
Right.
What if it's a styrofoam?
You're right. This is going to be a case by case basis, and you could give me a scenario in which like I'll take everything in totality, weigh it up, and then a jury's going to have to make the decision of like, to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure this is probably how it's done now, right? I haven't actually litigated any of these specific cases, but like I'm guessing like a reasonable expectation of privacy, you don't have that on the street, and news agencies can go wherever they want and record anybody from the street, right? There's nothing stopping them, but they can't like kick down the door of your bedroom and do the same thing. But there's a whole bunch of gray area in between that I think that I think is going to be litigated. Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, so you are basically not in favor of, I think, what is current, let's say, Quebec or Canadian law. Like they are a single party consent, like across the board. Like if I want to go into like the conference room for my next meeting, I can record it, and like I don't need to tell anybody. And then same thing with like every other like whatever virtual meetings, and obviously meetings in public. So you think that there should be you should think there should be more nuance to the law, and that okay, interesting.
I think so. And the U.S. is split on this, right? There's some states that are two-party consent. There's some states that are one-party consent. It's tough.
Cool. We solved it.
Well, here's another question for you. So I know like you and Corey both mentioned the ticker, right? So I don't know if it's called a ticker, but like you have the statement that says this is AI generated, right? Like across the screen, right? To make it very, very clear, right? And the reason for that is to avoid like any possible defamation of the person, right? So everybody knows it's not really the person, right? So here's my question for you, okay? So this is like there are other types of violations, like there are other exceptions to the First Amendment aside from defamation, and one of them is false light, right? So you're not actually saying, it's not an actual false statement. You're simply misrepresenting, you're simply presenting the person in a misleading light, or you're not actually like lying or saying, you're not deliberately, there's not an actual false statement. You're simply misrepresenting their character or their likeness in a way to make the public believe that they would do this. So for instance, like one example might be that, for instance, let's say, for instance, a newspaper tomorrow, like they published a story about a series of child molestation cases that happened at a church, right? And they have a picture of the priest that is next to the story about the abuses that happened within that church. But the picture that is presented next to the story is in fact not the priest who is responsible for the abuse. In fact, he is not the one who's responsible, but because his picture is next to this story, and because everyone believes that in fact he is responsible as a consequence. So my question to you is, okay, do you think A, that should be something that should be objectionable, and B, do you think that if I put a very, very teeny tiny letters at the very underneath that picture that says that Father Smith, in fact, is not a child molester, underneath that giant picture, next to the huge words that claim and that discuss this, do you think that's sufficient enough for him not to have a complaint or not?
Yeah. So I believe that false light here is I kind of view it the exact same thing as like defamation. I guess you could like draw technical differences, but for the effect, like the question is the same, right? Are you making statements that are false or misleading? And misleading is going to be the standard here of like a reasonable person standard, like most of the law. Yeah, if you put it in tiny letters, like this is fake, and the intention there, like a reasonable person's not going to be able to see that, or the intention there is going to be to hide it, then I think that should be illegal, right? But if it's not, right, if it's like deep fake and pretty clearly in the bottom corner you see like made with AI machine XYZ, then that should be fine, right? I would consider it to be similar to like warning labels, right? Where it's like, if I'm going to sell you like a, I don't know, something that could explode in your face, but like I hide like the warning label in the very back of the manual upside down in Chinese, this is very different than like if I put it right on the face of the product. Do not stick your hands in the wood chipper. Okay, if I put that on the product, don't stick your hands in the wood chipper, and then you shove your hands in the wood chipper, that's your own damn fault. But if it's in Chinese upside down in the back of the manual, maybe it's not your fault, assuming that, let's say, this wood chipper is like a weird design in which a reasonable person wouldn't know to,
The wood chipper
not stick their hands
chases after you.
Yeah, it chases after you if you don't activate the safety button, which is located on the underside of the panel. Sure, something like that.
I just pointed it out because like it is a technical difference, but I think it's an important difference between defamation, because with defamation you have to explicitly say something that is not true, right? As opposed to here, like you're not explicitly saying that Father Smith is a child molester. You just provided an enormous picture on the front page of the newspaper next to a story that heavily implies that he is a child molester, right? Like, do you think that in that case, like, since that's more than likely going to be the case with most AI porn, right? Because most people like will probably not be able to tell the difference. And more than likely, like the standard that you mentioned earlier about like the ticker at the front that says this is AI porn will likely not be applied. Wouldn't that mean that most AI porn, like under your definition, would therefore have to be criminalized and thrown out?
Oh yeah. If the AI porn didn't include the warnings, then it'd be criminal. If it did include the warnings, then it wouldn't be criminal. In the same way that like if you like publish stories of like this, this guy is a pedophile, and then it shows a big picture that says this is a church goer who you can read more about on page 8, and then like the story is totally unrelated to this guy. Yeah, I think this guy probably has the right to like bring up a stink, and the paper should have to issue corrections.
That's interesting that we're going to have to get to a point in life that we're going to have to really stand 10 toes down on who and what we are, right? Because if you get into these fields where they are going to make AI porn or shit, even when it becomes, virtual reality to that extent, you're going to have to represent yourself to where people know you're not that person to defy your own integrity to make that type of stuff. Yeah. Just in case they don't put the watermark on it.
I think the misleading element, though, here is actually beneficial to me, because if I'm not mistaken, I didn't see it, but I was told that the porn of Taylor Swift was pretty ridiculous. Like, wasn't it all like of a football team all like banging her at the same time or something?
I haven't seen it. I don't want
to see
on
the field. It's like
on the field. I don't know who's going to get misled by that. I don't know.
Yeah.
There is footage of her at the games, so there's some pretty stupid people.
Oh my God! Now, Majin, this is why, like, for the better part of the last 7-8 years, I have been pushing very hard that we need to have a national conversation about literally a privacy amendment to the Constitution, because this is going to be literally frontline and sinker for everyone for the next 20 years. We're going to see computing power just get to the point where like it will literally just make artificial constructs you will believe almost anything. Like, you can't trust your sight, you can't trust your ears. It's going to get nasty. And I'm like, again, America, you can listen to me on the conversations we need to have today, because if we don't, we're going to deal with it tomorrow. And it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, it's
like how many people are going to have their hearts broken and like be personally destroyed because of this shit coming down the pipe? We already are seeing it.
Well, even to the point where I could see it being this toxic, like, yo, I don't like this dude at work, right? And I know a little something about like making AI video, and dude's got a banging wife, right? And I'm gonna make this whole elaborate thing of me just doing the worst things that I could possibly do to his wife and sending it to him.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that, dude. Yeah. Oh hell, like
that's crazy, ain't it?
Go ahead, Tiberius.
Go ahead.
So just to like crystallize it, Lactoid, and so going back to your drawing example, so you think in the privacy of your own home, everyone has the right to draw like whatever they want.
Yeah. or think of whatever they want, or program whatever they want. Yeah.
Well,
I can
don't
kind
know
of float that. That's part of the privacy amendment. Like, right? Privacy goes two ways. Like, on some level, you should have a reasonable expectation of privacy within your own home, but like, obviously, you should respect other people's privacy too, right? Like, I think that should be able to be double-headed. The other thing I actually did remember is that think about how powerful ChatGPT is now, right? To where like people are literally able to turn in essays with this shit. And granted, I know most teachers are smart enough to catch it, but how long is that going to last? Like we're already like you can actually see certain creators and content makers to where you say write this song like Snoop Dogg or make a presentation like Peter Zion. It's wild. It gets some of the cadence down, the nomenclature, all that. It's not gonna be too much longer before I'd say next election cycle. Let's see where we are. I guarantee this shit's gonna be way better.
I think what you're going to see,
we're already
though,
here.
I think what you're going to see, though, and they do this for for law school exams already, and I'm sure they're going to put it everywhere. Which is they put there's programs that you download that you take exams or write papers within, and the programs are essentially would otherwise be spyware. They monitor like everything in your computer, and they monitor every keystroke. So and the camera will watch your eyes to make sure you're not looking elsewhere. So you have to be staring at the screen, and it's monitoring the computer the whole time. And if you look away for too long, it'll send an alert to the administrator, and then they'll review the footage and see if you're cheating or not. Like they're getting it gets pretty draconian, but that's the only way to make sure someone's not just fucking typing in shit to AI, at least, or back when I was in law school,
right?
Just reading off of a cheat sheet.
So
I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
So of the countries or whatever locations that have laws, actually drawing certain things, like you think that should be changed, or like you should be able to draw whatever you want.
Absolutely, right? Because if I imagine something in my head, like I have a right to my own thoughts and my own fantasies. If I fantasize Taylor
I don't
Swift,
disagree with that.
Yeah, if I fantasize Taylor Swift being a dragon, then I should be able to draw Taylor Swift as a dragon. What if the dragon has giant tits?
Yeah.
Am I now? That's a step too far. Now I can't give the dragon giant tits. Come on, I give the dragon giant tits.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's a little weird, Lactoid.
But wait. You know that there are other examples that some people I can go to the extreme examples that some people might find it uncomfortable what you're drawing. And so I'm trying to crystallize where your line is without getting you in trouble. So
that's why we probably can't go there, Corey, is what it sounds like.
And also, just to crystallize it, you're okay with me AI generating you drenched in the Canadian flag and a whole bunch of Canadian apparel.
As long as
there's a tiny watermark.
Not tiny. We just talked about that. No. We just talked about that. That's false light. Okay, we just talked about that. This is which I would call defamation. I think that it should be reasonable. If you have
a compliment.
If you have a reasonable watermark that says this is fake, Lactoid's actually a proud American. You can make whatever you want. You can make pornography of me if you really want to. I'm not going to sue you.
So,
unless I can get money out of it. Maybe,
I got one.
I don't disagree that you are obviously in touch with your own thoughts because as of right now we don't have access to them, but that actually might be changing sometime in the future. But
that's some Orwellian shit, right?
But there's some interesting conversation to be had there. But I don't think at least for me, it doesn't necessarily translate. That means you can draw whatever you want, per se.
Look, I got two conditions for you, Lactoid. Number one, don't share it, right? You want to do it in privacy of your own home, and it's, whatever. We're not going to police your thoughts to that degree, but if you get if you share it, you're on the hook for it. But if somebody steals it and then shows it up, but you are the original content creator or whatnot, you're still liable. You're still on the hook for that shit.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that if I draw Taylor Swift as a dragon with giant juicy titties, and someone breaks in my house, steals that painting, and puts it on the internet, I'm responsible?
Partially, yes. Let's go.
Oh, come on. That's ridiculous. We don't hold this standard for literally any other product, right? If I own a gun and somebody breaks in my house, steals my gun, and goes to shoot somebody with it, am I responsible? If someone steals my car and hits somebody with it, am I responsible? This is a wild standard that we're not going to hold to anything else.
Unfortunately, we won't, but there's some levels where I absolutely wish that we did as society, because there's certain people you shouldn't fucking sell shit to. This is really why we criminalize drug dealers.
And we shouldn't. I'm consistent on this. Legalize all drugs.
See,
Tiberius, you're not going to catch me. You're not going to catch me.
Okay, so last year in the
I'm
UK,
pro-lactoid.
last year in the UK, they passed the Online Safety Act. And this bill, it was set out to define a way to handle legal but harmful content and material that wasn't explicitly against the law, but which individually, for an aggregate, posed a risk such as healthcare disinformation, posts encouraging suicide, eating disorders, political disinformation with the potential to undermine democracy or create panic.
Wild.
So, is that something we would be okay with being passed here in America?
I think there's a legitimate conversation that it violates the First Amendment, but the problem is, like, you know, social Tiberius going to do that. Like, I fucking usually strongly approve of this shit. I hate the live and let live policy to a large degree. It just bothers me up the wall.
Mm.
I'm in Canada, and I think we're already talking about passing similar legislation.
Thank God for the First Amendment. Banning political disinformation? Are you kidding me? This is crazy, right? What becomes political disinformation?
Oh my God!
Whatever the ruling party in the deep state says is fucking political disinformation, and then they're gonna fucking regulate your fucking thoughts.
The Ministry of Truth is here.
The Ministry
of
Truth. Wait, you're joking? But like, what else is it if they're banning political disinformation? Like, what the fuck? We already have, like, if you can prove it's fake, if you can prove fake allegations against a specific person, we already have defamation laws for that. What is political disinformation?
All right. Let's all fuck. Excuse me. I will end the memes here for a second, but let's be real here. Like, we're getting to a point where, like, we actually have to put politics on trial. Like, we can't keep doing this bullshit where people can just say anything and everything they fucking want. It's gonna if this continues to be the case, we're actually gonna have to put it down where if you want to say something political, it has to pass like the inspection of a court of law. You've got to be able to defend that shit. Like, you can't keep having everybody and anybody post wild ass shit like the fucking, you know, like the polar ice caps melted last year and we just didn't fucking know about it. Like, we're getting to the point where, like, reality is being consumed by ignorance and lies. Like, we can't keep doing that on this road. We will not have it. We will not have a society.
I'm curious if your guiding principle of, like, yeah, whatever for imagery, whatever, as long as there's a watermark or, like, you know, some whatever banner that's clear that it's fake, does that also extend to, like, text? Lactoid?
I thought you were dumping on Tiberius for a second. I was looking at my chat. I'm sorry. Can you please ask your question?
Why would I?
Because he just talked about getting rid of the First Amendment and criminalizing all religion. That's literally what he just said. It's crazy. Go ahead, Corey.
Just TDL, just real quick. Like, I understand the First Amendment's there for a reason. Like, if you can give me some kind of, like, weaponized thing that the average person can go around and start smacking the shit out of people who are absolutely, like, just sending out lies left, right, and center, I will totally back off of this shit. But somewhere along the line, something's got to give. Either I need to be able to start fucking suing people for just saying ignorant ass shit online and just do it for pennies on the dollar compared to what it is now, or, like, society has to fucking mobilize into saying there's shit we're not going to accept anymore. One of the two has to happen.
Would you criminalize somebody posting about how, let's say, somebody died and rose on the third day without any evidence?
Absolutely. It's fucking wild. And now we actually know that people will believe this shit.
You're banning, you understand the implications of this, right? Like,
I know exactly where you were going with that.
Yes.
I'm an atheist for a reason.
Oh,
like, this shit's degenerate as shit.
This is the most Soviet fucking opinion you hold. You're telling me we're to start fucking, like, burning the churches? Like, this is crazy. We let people.
No, look, I'm cool if you want to spew your bullshit, but you got to pay taxes for it too.
Oh my God, Corey. Sorry. Go ahead and ask your less fucking Stalinistic question. I'm open for it. Go ahead.
So yeah. I'm like I even said in my opening statement, I'm largely on board with, like, yeah, the watermark on, like, imagery. So, like, does that also extend to, like, text as well?
Yeah, if it's like a false attribution kind of thing, where it's like, you know, put in quotation marks a fake quote that, like, makes somebody look like a Nazi. Yeah, I would, and I think that that should be illegal. And arguably, like, if it maligns somebody, they should
be illegal.
Potentially, they should maybe be able, like, that person should maybe have a cause of action to be able to say, no, like, you have to clarify your statements. You have to, like, explain actually, like, the full quote.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So I'm also I asked this question because I have something more explicit in mind, and actually, like, yeah, you were there for this. I don't know if you remember it, but like whatever, 2 weeks ago, we were on a WIC panel about immigration and whatever the border crisis,
Okay.
and then there was the call-in, Artemis Fowl. They came in with
your favorite person, yeah.
with the yeah, absolutely, and they came in making a claim of like there were 30 million undocumented immigrants in the 90s, and I said, well, can you cite your source? And they're like, no, I can't cite my source. They're very confident that they had this number in mind, but we're probably going to get to the point of like they could just like generate, a study that like looks legitimate to back up their claim. So like, how would you handle that? Like, is it still just like your watermark principle?
It would have to be. Well, this is difficult because I would say watermark principle, but on a generalized claim like that, which is like a number question, there's nobody that's actually being defamed. So I don't even know if you actually could criminalize that. That's just somebody making shit up. And like, we normally don't criminalize that unless you can prove specific harm to a specific person because of like fraud, I suppose. Now, because I think defamation falls under the same logic of fraud. Maybe if the study is used to induce some kind of financial action, maybe then we could like go after it in terms of fraud. But generally speaking, again, this is the problem when you start saying like, well, no, we know the truth. And if you like say the wrong thing, now we're going to come after you because like what we just experienced with Tiberius, we're going to start, America's going to change very quickly and very horribly, right? We're going to start having Gestapo.
I'm not necessarily like I understand Tiberius' concerns and I share a lot of them. I don't know what the answer is, but I also have concerns of like we're gonna get to the place of like you can actually like literally like generate like studies that look legitimate of like here's my peer-reviewed AI generated study that it's like and people will buy into it. We already have flat earthers. What it's gonna look like when it's like this study says
wouldn't the authors be able to, if it's attributed to authors that exist, the authors could sue for defamation, and if it's attributed to authors that don't exist, right? Then you're not going to be able to find the authors, and then I guess that's like demonstrates a lot.
Yeah, but we already know that most people don't fact check. You didn't even watch my Back to the Future video, and I'm going to expect you to like fact check a claim on like.
I just believed you. You're right. I just believed you. Maybe I shouldn't have. Did you make that up?
Yeah, but
okay. I really want. Oh. Who'd you say next?
I thought Fairy Queen was going to say something.
Okay. I was just going to say I agree with Lactoid, like in terms of like the second point, like regarding the. But the one, but like the one thing I will say, because there are some. Okay, so can you just remind me? There was a litany of things that you said that the act was going to specifically censor. Did that include incitement to violence, to incitement to suicide, incitement?
Yeah.
That can be really sticky, right? But I do think, and it's sticky, but I do think that there is precedent that exists to criminalize and to send people to jail for incitement to suicide. That happened recently. And that's going to be a problem too. Do you think that that's something that should be criminalized? I mean, it's going to be difficult. I'm not denying that it's going to be sticky to do. But if I actually have, if I can actually show you a long series of text messages of like deliberately telling this person to die over and over and over and over again, is that speech that should not be criminalized? I'm not sure that it shouldn't be.
I don't think it should be criminalized. I was critical of that case the moment, and everyone on the fucking internet, everyone online was saying, "You're right. You should go after this woman for encouraging this guy to kill himself," which he eventually did. But I think that was protected speech, and she should not have gotten in trouble for that. Sorry.
And even then, we don't even know if that was the sole out, even if it comes to like the video, the deep fakes, even the harassment, the argument could be made that is this the actual thing, or was there other things in their life that was leading to their suicide? You couldn't definitively say that this one thing was it. Can't prove that.
All right, Lactoid, you got my ire, but look, I want to get this at least out of the way real quick before I go down this line. First and foremost, do you believe that like the current state of disinformation and like information sharing is openly problematic or hostile? This is for Lactoid more than anybody because he's the one that disagrees with me.
Yeah, cool. I think disinformation is problematic.
Okay, cool. Now, I totally will get one that it would probably violate the First Amendment if it's something that's more like either collectivized or like centralized, right? So let's look at the decentralized like solutions to this. Because if you can give me one, I'm cool about it. I would love decentralized shit. Okay, but like outside of empowering me to be able to sue somebody for saying some wild ass shit about me and it not costing me $1,000, what other recourse do I have? Show up at their door and punch them in the face? I'm still going to jail. Like, what do you want me to do?
Well, if you personally are like the one being like maligned, we have defamation. If you're not the one being maligned, no, I don't think you can just go punch somebody who's spreading disinformation.
Well, that's kind of the point here. Like,
otherwise, I'm punching a lot of
one,
liberals. I'm just saying.
No, I get it. No, I get it. What first and foremost, let's do the one where I'm actually like a legitimate plaintiff, right? Like, I think you fucked me over. I think that you're, doing something that is almost a defamation. But I'm literally a guy who can't afford, the thousands of dollars it's going to, afford me for defamation. And you're some fucking punk on the street that couldn't pay me anyway. Like, you literally just made a meme with some fucking edit in about 10 minutes. Like,
there's no. Okay, so. There's no issue finding, as long as the person you're suing has money, there's no issue finding an attorney to represent you, just given the fact that most plaintiffs' attorneys these days go off a contingency fee, where it's just like, if you win, I get a third of whatever you win. And then like, if you win, like, if you win $100,000, they get, $33,000. That's how they make their money. It's not necessarily like an hourly fee. Otherwise, you would have way less lawsuits, right? In terms of going after somebody who doesn't have any money, courts can... courts can not only issue money judgments, they can also issue injunctions, which is like, you have to stop doing this, right? A court can tell you and then at that point, if a court orders you to stop posting this specific thing and you do it anyway, now that's contempt of court, right? Now that's a crime that the cops will come.
Okay, so how much is that going to cost me? Just doing that for anyone that, that just decided to piss me off that particular day when I think they're going overboard.
So you always have a right to represent yourself in court. So if you can't afford it, you can still do it yourself and go to a judge and argue. Now, if you were talking about how perhaps in America there's a little bit of a justice for sale problem because the scum of the earth lawyers are like money, and they kind of have a way of making money by kind of exploiting the legal system in order to provide advice to people who can pay. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of maybe a more general criticism you can levy, but this is not unique to this problem. Like, this is the case for everything.
So 100% agree with that. Like, I'll just finish it up with this. Like, I know I've gone rounds with you in this. Like, there's a level where I respect that the bar system is a cartel. I respect that because, like, you actually want to say, hey, look, I actually did something to get this besides just law school. But there's levels to where, is a JD not hard enough to fucking get on its own? Like, and you get to pass the bar. Like, I mean, one of the two needs to be a thing. Either, like, you can, you got a law degree. Okay, cool. Like, you're good enough to be a lawyer. Or two, you don't need a law degree, but you have to pass the bar. Like, why is it that we have this fucking massive level here? That's a lot of leap for a lot of people to climb through.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. The Bar Association is a cartel. Every state, it's a state-run cartel. I think if we remove the Bar Association, legal services would be less expensive for people to get for all sorts of things, and I think that would be generally a good thing. I think this is a market. It's a limitation on a market, which doesn't work out good for people.
Would you go the other way and actually make it where you don't need a JD to actually take the bar exam?
Some states already have that. California, for example.
I think it's like 4.
I would have it everywhere, but I also don't even think you should need to pass the bar to practice law. Like, the requirement should be removed.
You just think you should just open up a shop and go?
Yeah, if you want to. But you can't advertise.
Okay.
You can't false advertise. So, like, if you didn't pass the bar and you didn't go to law school, you have to tell people that and say, look, I didn't go to fucking law school. I didn't pass the bar. Do you want my services anyway? Because let's say you have somebody who has a hobby, studies law. Like, I've met people on the internet who study law as a hobby who are probably more knowledgeable on certain aspects of the law than most lawyers, if we're being frank, right? Like,
right. So that's kind of where I'm like, sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you keep going. I mean, we can keep talking about lactoid schooling. You know what I'm saying? So going back to the original subject, I was curious because couldn't you claim yourself? Now, I don't know much about like copyright law or anything like that, right? But let's just say, creator, you're is a persona, right? Your imagery and everything like that. You use it, stream or whatever, right? What if you're intellectual property at this point, right? Could you then, like, I mean, technically Taylor Swift is that, right? Couldn't she fight her imagery being used in a deepfake AI that way? Or is that even possible nowadays? Like, I don't know.
Maybe. I'm super skeptical of intellectual property as a concept, generally speaking, but I'm especially going to be skeptical of it in like these kind of scenarios. And also, I'm pretty sure like this would fall under the parody exception, unless there was a specific law against it, right? Because all you would have to do,
even with a parody, you have to modify it, right? It has
which
to
with
have that
AI,
level.
which with AI, you're modifying it.
Okay. Cause like, you know, in the situation we are with like games like Pal World, hell, like you'll see this even with Ark Survival Online, like they're using Mario characters in one of their like kind of like, hey, you'll be able to do this in the future. Nintendo being somebody that is extremely like they'll go after the smallest YouTubers if they do something wrong with their content. I'm just so curious if there's like a way to protect people under that guise, but I guess there's that.
I hate copyright. I actually
So,
like patents are harder for me to like work with. Like I don't like them, but I don't know necessarily how to get rid of them. Copyright is just fucking. At this point, I'm convinced. Just get rid of it, right? Disney doesn't need to keep fucking us forever.
True.
all right. So closing statements on this one. Start with Corey.
Well, I was not convinced by my fellow Canadians' argument, where I still have my position that, yeah, pretty much if you're generating it, I think there's, an implicit expectation of privacy. I think that's, well, I guess what it boils down to, where I think that's there. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Fairy Queen.
Agree with what Corey said. And this is what it boils down to. I don't know like what the substantive difference is between somebody seeing my real likeness as opposed to my fake AI generated likeness in terms of privacy. So that's where I think like the contention for me lies, because I understand that like the point of the examples we went through was basically like both parties, I didn't believe that my naked body was actually going to be viewed by anyone, right? In this context. That's the point of it being an invasion of privacy, right? But if that's the case, right? I don't think anyone that has an actual like AI generated piece of pornography created of them is actually had like a reasonable expectation that was going to happen to them. I don't think that that's true for most people. And so I actually think that like, and this is like part of the issue too. It's very hard for me to see how you can be against some forms of revenge porn and therefore also support AI porn, even if you provide the ticker in that instance, right? So that's what I would say.
All right. And Lactoid, defender of the faith.
Yeah, no, I think that as is typical, Lactoid here is the defender of free expression and a beacon of liberty in a otherwise dark authoritarian world. In 2015, and I think everyone here would condemn this. So I'm not saying that anybody here wouldn't. But in 2015, I think the world experienced a attack on Charlie Hebdo specifically was attacked because they dared use drawings to represent something that people hated the idea of them representing. And the whole world stood up in a moment and said, no, this is wrong, not just because people died, but because the idea of being able to draw what you want and express yourself and criticize people and parody people and to not have your thoughts controlled is a freedom worth dying for. But for some reason, we throw all of that away when our favorite pop star gets a little bit offended by some AI pictures on the internet. Absolutely not. This should be allowed. And I understand that people are upset, but the UK needs to get it together and stop being so authoritarian.
Awesome. Thank you. Majin?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with it. But hey, where we're at now. Y'all gonna have to get used to like somebody maybe want to put your face on something, throwing your ass in the circle. You know what I'm saying? Get used to seeing yourself twerking, even you don't twerk. We're here now. It's fucked up, but maybe when they'll like how all things come. You see what OnlyFans girls and their content getting leaked. Somebody developed an algorithm to like, hey, cut that shit out. I'm sure with this AI porn, there's gonna be something to defend us against, us throwing our asses in circles. Yeah, but hope for the best for the future. You know what I'm saying?
The future looks bleak. And on that, Tiberius.
Yeah, so I think I made most of the points I wanted to make, but I'm kind of going to recircle just because I've been beating this drum for years, and I mean it. It's been 4 years. Like, people don't understand like the new era that we're in. It's weird because so many people are still involved in the internet, but they just don't seem to get like how at risk we are at disinformation, and also just like things that are incredibly personally and socially damaging. We already have a mental health crisis as it is, and we're just not even trying to put the brakes on this shit. I'm totally on board with Lactoid being like, yo, like, Tiberius, you want to hit this real hard. And like, look, either I think we get decentralized or centralized tools where society or the government or something that has actually like force of weight is going to have to handle this shit, or more preferably, and I always prefer decentralization, is that we give you a tool to go smack people when they fuck you and wrong you, or they try to go fuck you up. That's not okay, right? You need to have an ability to defend yourself, or at least have a reciprocity to where it's mutually assured destruction. Like, I don't want to get to that point where we're literally just like fucking doing revenge porn on all each other, but if not that, I want other options. And unfortunately, outside of talking with people like Lactoid, and I'm sorry I dissuaded it so much, but I'm fucking feisty today. Like, I need answers. I want answers to some of these problems because we're not even thinking about them, and they're already giving consequences today. How much longer does this shit have to go? Sorry for my rant, but I appreciate you having me for this topic.
I like the rant. Mutually assured destruction for revenge porn. Let's go, people. All right, let's move on to the next topic. So, will other states replicate Alabama's nitrogen execution? Do we want the death penalty but be able to say it isn't cruel? Is this situation a positive direction for dealing with executions? Should we consider better ways of executing people or abolish the practice in general? Alabama's first ever use of nitrogen gas for an execution could gain traction among other states and change how the death penalty is carried out in the United States, much like lethal injection did more than 40 years ago. According to experts on capital punishment, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall said Friday that the execution of Kenneth Eugene Smith, a 58-year-old convicted of a 1988 murder for hire, went off as planned, and his office is ready to help other states if they want to begin nitrogen executions. Alabama has done it, and now so can you, Marshall said at the news conference. So how do we feel about this? Starting with Corey.
Yeah, well, as a Canadian, like my friend Lactoid, I would say this is, Canada doesn't have the death penalty, and I think for good reason. Well, in my mind, this is just a barbaric way. Not only do I think lethal injection, pretty barbaric, but yeah, even this a step further. Well, this seems to largely stem from the fact that obtaining the things to actually perform lethal injection are getting more and more scarce, as they should be, since understandably, the companies that make these pharmaceuticals, they don't want them to be used for lethal injection. And so there's a shortage. And so this substitute is a pretty barbaric substitute. And should not move in that direction. No other state should adopt it, and we should move in the direction of no death penalty. I'll leave it there for now.
Awesome. Fairy Queen.
I agree with Corey. I am in support of abolishing the death penalty, and I don't think that the death penalty is constitutional. I don't think so for the simple reason that I think that it violates the 8th Amendment, and I think that it violates 2 out of the 4 principles that were established in Furman v. Georgia in 1972, which was a landmark case which discussed capital punishment in the United States. And the 4 principles are, for it to be cruel and unusual, are: 1, that punishment must not by its severity be degrading to human dignity, especially torture. I don't know how much more degrading to human dignity dying can possibly be. It seems to me on the face of it that death is degrading to human dignity, and taking somebody's life away surely meets that principle on the face of it. Secondly, a severe punishment that is obviously inflicted in a wholly arbitrary fashion. There are many people that say that, or who are in favor of abolishing the death penalty, who say that its application is arbitrary. I'm not sure that that's true in every case, and I think that that actually would be more difficult to establish, so I'm not convinced with that point. The third point is a severe punishment that is clearly and totally rejected throughout society. Clearly, that's not true. There are many people who are in support of the death penalty, and so it fails that standard. But the second point that I do think that it fulfills is a severe punishment that is patently unnecessary. You do not need to kill people. It is not necessary or needed to actually execute citizens. You can simply put them in prison for the rest of their lives. So I think that the two reasons why I think that it is cruel and unusual is because A, I think on the face of it, killing somebody and executing somebody obviously robs somebody of their human dignity because you're robbing them of their life, and B, because it's not necessary, which is the fourth principle.
All right, Lactoid.
Yeah, I would like to get into. We can get into the law a little bit. I think it's an interesting look on this. But to be frank with you, I'm not a big fan of the death penalty for pragmatic reasons. It's more expensive. We can't undo it if it turns out we got the wrong person, which, although rare, can happen, right? The Innocence Project has done a lot of good work on showing how a lot of the ways we convicted people in the past was flawed, and a lot of people spent a lot of time in prison when they probably shouldn't have. And finally, it's there's just more effective things we can do, right? Look, I'm not a big fan of the Eighth Amendment. I don't like the idea of, I think that cruel and unusual is a kind of a weird nebulous term. I would prefer to use it kind of in line with what it was intended to mean at the time of its drafting, which is that you can do quite a bit was allowed. And the 13th Amendment has an exception where you can't generally enslave people, but as of punishment of a crime. We have a huge labor pool that we could use to make cheap products that we're throwing away by killing them. I think we should just use them as slave labor instead.
So much better. Thank you, Lactoid. Majin.
So I definitely don't agree with any death sentence or anything like that. My boy Bam Black American Made said it best on ABE. We can't control what happens when somebody's arrested. Sometimes officers are forced in situations that have to look for lethal force, and that's understandable. But if we already got the guy, we captured him, he's locked up, right? He's not a threat anymore. And at this point, we forget that humans can grow and change. Somebody that's locked up for 20 years isn't going to be the person that they were when they were in there. They could have, just stayed stagnant. I've met somebody recently that I don't think is going to be changing anytime soon, not until the day she dies. But hey, that's very rare. Most time people, when they're forced into tough situations, they want to get out of those tough situations. They want to be better people. The death penalty takes that from them. I maybe can make an argument for there's certain things I would agree that I don't care if you can grow from it. I think you should be packed up or put under the prison. You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily have your life taken away. But yeah, generally, I think it's just bad. I just don't think it's a good thing.
Right, Tiberius.
Oh, this will be fun. So the parts of my soul, and this one's actually a little bit bent, but I generally side more with being pro-death penalty. So let me hit both sides of this because I think both sides have points. Being the hippie part of me is very much kind of anti-death penalty because it is something to say we are more morally virtuous to say, hey, look, we will never become these monsters. We will not do their actions, right? We'll incarcerate you. We will exile you from society permanently. But outside of sending them to the ghost zone, we're not going to do that kind of shit because we're just morally superior to that. I think that does speak volumes. But there's another part of me that does definitely not agree with it. I think there are certain people who absolutely disgrace human dignity. They are monsters. They are not humans. They absolutely should be treated as such. There are things that people do, some of these school shooters that kill 8 children, where I'm like, excuse me, I'm a little passionate here. You have demonstrably demonstrated your ability to disregard not only your own dignity in acting responsible, but the dignity of others in taking away their own very lives. You're getting a trip to the furnace, and we will absolutely do it with a smile on our faces. I cannot reconcile those two. I really can't. But there's definitely parts of those for both that I think make sense. And I honestly not 100% which way I want to go about it, because there's part of me where that sadism comes out, and I know why it's there. That's my own personal issues. I'll deal with that. But there's parts where at some point there's some actions I think that we need to make a very public statement that as a human being, we do not appreciate this shit one little bit.
Okay, open it up. Fairy Queen's hand was first, then Corey.
To echo like some of the sentiment that you said, Tiberius. So like an example of this, like I'm sure everyone remembers, like when Ron DeSantis, I'm not sure if it was successful. Did he pass a bill? He passed a bill in the state of Florida that essentially like allowed for the death penalty in some cases of child rape. I believe it's repeated instances of child rape under the age of 12. And a lot of people criticized him for that decision. I thought it was extremely based. I celebrated that. Even though I'm against the death penalty, I thought that was an incredibly great decision. But because I would agree, I also agree with you, Tiberius. I think that there are some people who do deserve to die, right, for what they've done. But that's not really the question that we're asking when we're talking about the death penalty, right? The question is, why does the state have the right to take your life away for the actions that you have committed? That's the question, right? Like, why do you want the state to be able to make that decision? Like, why does it have the right to do that? That's my question, right? I have listen, I too would love to send, some people to the chair for what they've done, right? But that's not the issue, right? The issue is is it constitutional, right? Does it violate the principles, the contract that we've all bought into, right? And secondly, it sets a precedent, the precedent that the state has the right to take your life away should you violate a law.
Right. I can answer half of that. I can't get into the constitutional part because I would have to actually do a lot of thinking on that. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, and I'm not going to act like I am. So I'll put the ice on that one. However, when it comes to like, why do we do this? Or like, what is the justification for it? The reason that we have laws and like the social structures and even just the police in general is that we actually should, in my opinion, give power to the sovereign in that they give us a standard codex of how we're supposed to behave as people. Now, we can bitch and fight about what that codex is, but there are certain things that we absolutely outline where it's like, look, not only do we appreciate that, your free trial of life is going to be fucking put to nil if you conduct certain behaviors. Now, part of that's more deterrence, but the ethical part of this actually is that the reason we give the death penalty to the power of the state is because we do not want it amongst ourselves to check each other on that. We want something that is made up of people and institutions that have like a collective mindset that can keep each other in check enough to go, all right, this person's a piece of shit. They actually do deserve to die. That's my answer for you.
Can I just ask you a question? What rights do you think you should have when you go to jail? Do you think you have any rights as a prisoner?
That's a great question, actually. I've actually thought about this to some degree, but I've never been able to spit out a coherent answer out of my ethical calculator. Because there's levels to where, in theory, like you have to be in jail, you should have ethically violated somebody on some level, right? So you might have something that's minimum security because you're just kind of an asshole who fucking like urinated in public and you're in the tank for a weekend, or you might be maximum security because you killed 14 people. Right? Like there's a severity in there where I think that the nuance is there. I can't just simply say everyone gets X rights taken away. Like I believe that, if you serve out your term as a felon, you should have your felony revoked at the end of your term so that you are assumed to be, if not rehabilitated, at least you are given a second chance to make yourself as a citizen again. Sorry, ethically, this is a mess. I apologize.
Now I have questions also for Fairy Queen based off what she said. But yeah, Tiberius, I think if I remember correctly, like you mentioned, like, yeah, you, part of the reasons why you're pro death penalty is like, about sending a message to the public. So are you potentially also in favor of public executions?
I think that's a little overly barbaric for me, but there's definitely a part of me that just, kind of grins at the idea. Like the idea that we hate you so much that we'll actually explode you at the Super Bowl. There's something about that where it's just like somebody deserves that at some point in life. I definitely know that, but it's one of those deals where should we do that? Should we embrace like the sadism? I guess what I would just call it. To that point where we kind of look like the monsters that we're killing. Like there's probably a level where we shouldn't do that. Like I'm at least trying to be mindful of that, but there's definitely levels to where I don't even know how to put it into words, to be completely honest. There's just a point where I think it's mutually virtuous to kill people. There really is.
Sure, but basically you're not totally close to that of like, basically based off what you're saying.
I'm going to write it off just as like it's overly barbaric for me. Like there's definitely a level of like at some level in me where I would want to do that, but I think it's just too far. Like I don't think I can indulge in it.
Okay, interesting. Because at least in my mind, at least if there's this messaging aspect to you, I would assume, it could be wrong, that you would want like
call it a virtue signal, if you will. It is more like it's not about the prosperity of just going, "Hey, everyone, we killed this guy, yay!" It's more something deeper than that. It's something where it's just like, we're setting the tone and the example. There are consequences for your actions. Like it is largely, it's part deterrence and part. I literally don't know how any other way to say it and just say this is the right thing to do. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I'll speak to that. Well, I also want
mainly about this article that I think we're kind of sorry, Corey, real quick.
Okay.
I think we're getting away from, because overall, yeah, we're talking about in essence, the death penalty, good and bad, but the way they killed this last dude with nitrous or whatever that was pretty fucked up. Because they couldn't get the lethal injection or whatever. I think our methods, if we are going to continue the death penalty and we do decide to take somebody's life, should make it quick, fast, in a hurry. I don't think we need to like dial into the whole vindictive nature of like, oh, this person needs to suffer. Yeah, I get it. Some people will feel that way, but come on now. Well, we've gotten past that.
That's something I want to speak to. And also Fairy Queen. Like if I remember correctly, when you were engaging with Tiberius, like it seems like at a philosophical level, you're not opposed to the death penalty, but like you pretty much brought up the state of like, why should the state have the right? So am I correct in assuming, like, in the absence of a state, like on a deserted island, like then you do have the right to take matters into your own hands?
If we remove the artifice of the government and the prison and the police and if it's just us on an island, right? I do think like I do think that there's a difference between
a Lord of the Flies type of scenario.
I think there is an important distinction to be made between saying you are someone who deserves to die and saying that I am someone who has the right to take your life away from you, right? I think that there is a distinction to be made between those two different things. I don't think that they're the same thing, right?
Okay, well,
it's fair.
Well, to clarify it, just to make sure I understand what you're saying, like I can sort of agree, like, so are you okay with like condemning someone like you deserve to die, but we're not going to enact it? Like you don't take the action. Like this is pretty much, is that the extent of what you're willing to go? You just want to express the bloodlust, which I can totally understand. That's something that I can like I can probably understand that of like that's what I sort of want to speak about when Magin brought up of like, yeah, like if someone ever harmed in any way, like so like anyone that I cared about or loved, like I would almost certainly want them dead, like for sure. I don't have children, but even just like whatever distant relatives or close relatives, like yeah, if they were killed or whatever, abused in any way, I would have a desire for blood. But I would also at the same time hope that pretty much I'm restricted from doing that, and that whatever, not that I'm religious, but I think whatever better judgment or the better angels of our nature, I think would hopefully take precedence. Where like, so I can understand if that's what you're saying of like, yes, we condemn someone of like, you deserve to die, but then are you also stopping there? Like, we're not going to do it? Just to clarify what exactly you mean.
I'm essentially saying like I don't want the state to be involved with the death penalty. That's what I'm saying. I'm more wishy-washy as to whether or not you personally have a moral right to like be a vigilante and to kill someone. I could be convinced either way. I could see the argument to be made that you don't have the right to take somebody else's life away from them. But then I also think that there are some situations where if you've been put in a position, right, if somebody has come into your house and maybe they're not threatening to kill you, but they kill your wife or they kill your son or they kill your dog or they or they rape you. I don't think on a moral level that I would hold the person like morally accountable, like if that person went out and shot that person for what they did to them, because that person has intrinsically violated that person in a pretty severe and heinous way.
Oof.
But on a legal level, I don't think that they should be sent to the chair because I don't think that the state should have the power to make that decision.
Well, so then, like, are you are you okay with like whatever? If there's like this one person living in Liberland, okay, and they happen to kill someone, am I okay in like flying over there and killing them?
Do you live in Liberland? Do you pay taxes to Liberland?
Liberland doesn't have taxes.
Yeah, it's Liberland for a reason, because like it's a small, it's like I don't know, it's like 10 square kilometers, but it's not a state, and so if like that person is there, like and they happen to be a murderer, am I justified like killing them?
I think that if you exist within the land of Liberland and you decide to kill them for like being a murderer, I don't think that that's morally unjustified.
Okay.
Morally, I don't think it's unjustified.
Next up, Tiberius.
Yeah, so I don't know if I made my points very well on the last one, but it was to like what Queen's question was, like did I at least give like some level of ethical framework to like why I believe the state should murder in your eyes? Because I can probably go at it from a different angle based on what Corey was saying.
Here is I have like there are certain people who disgrace human dignity that need to be treated as such. You have demonstrably like you have demonstrated your ability to disregard not only your own dignity but the dignity of other people, and you cannot reconcile those two people, and that's the reason like, why those people should be sent to the chair. That's I think what you said there.
It was that, so that's the moral justification for like why anyone should kill anybody else, is that there's a point where it's like you've either violated me or have been such a disgrace to human dignity that like you should not be allowed. But let's do this versus like the person versus the state, because I guess I didn't answer this very well. The reason why I would rather have the state be like that arm of the enforcement is that one, two reasons, but I'll just put it this way. Number one is that there's a level where we kind of want to give our security as a more collective venture because of the fact that we're strong together, and that if you need to collect restitution or if you need to openly punish somebody for something that they've done to you or a loved one or what have you, like we need each other to kind of do that, right? You don't want to really bring that burden on like 80-year-old grandma to go kick Jack's ass over here who's 6'4" and is 35. Like that's not something that works out very well, right? So instead of having this system that it literally would be blatant, might makes right open lordism, we give that to the state. We say, hey, look, state, we don't always agree on how this is supposed to go, but you outline the rules here, and then whenever something is openly violated, it's your responsibility as the state to do that in our name. So that's the justification for me.
I would say that like if that's the case, then like the state, the codex that we currently have, I don't think that it allows for that. And I think that like if we're going to talk about like treating, like if we're going to talk about prisoners having any rights whatsoever, like within the context of the jail, right? This is why I think like the term cruel and unusual is a bit of a weird one for me. It seems just on the face of it, taking the life away from the person is cruel, right? Is it unusual? No, like it's pretty typical. Like you can find many examples of it. But is it cruel? Absolutely it is. And I do think that it violates those two principles that I mentioned earlier. And also, like, I mean, I won't disagree that we do like surrender, right, our security to a broader collective, right, to enforce, the laws of the land, right? Problem is the laws of the land I think that we currently live in do not allow for that. And I, for one, don't want to live in a state where the laws of the land permit for that, for many of the reasons that Lactoid mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
I'm not equipped to.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say.
Go ahead.
All right, Ty, then
mine's quick. Yeah, mine's quick. I'm not equipped to answer that question. Yeah, I'm not equipped to answer that question because as much as like I've read the Constitution at least a couple times, it's that I do not even have that memorable lawyer basis in my brain to just be like, yeah, it's totally doable because of this, this, and this, or it's totally not doable because of this, and this. I'd actually have to do a lot of thinking on that.
I think it gets. I get a little scared too, because you think about states like New York, which can be their ethics can be called into question, debate based on the color of the person they got on trial. So, leaving it to the state, yeah, I don't know, gives me the heebie-jeebies.
So,
Think about
well, I just wanted to say a couple things. The Eighth Amendment, we're talking about cruel and unusual. A constitutional argument that the death penalty is not acceptable is kind of an uphill battle for a couple reasons. First of all, the Supreme Court has consistently ruled that it's constitutional, right? Over and over again, you can kill people. The other issue is that at the time of the drafting of the Eighth Amendment, they were killing people for shit, right? Like, you murdered people, you got killed. That's just how it worked. And they were killing people for even less than that. The unusual aspect, as I read it, is really referring to like the punishment matching the crime, as opposed to it being like generally. I guess it is kind of tied into like being generally accepted with society, but I think it's more emphasized on like the specific crime we're talking about. So, is it cruel? Is the death penalty cruel? I don't think killing somebody is necessarily cruel. It depends on the circumstances, and
I think it fall. It Sorry, Lactoid. I think it does when it falls onto how you kill that person, though, right?
potentially, right. And this is part of the reason why you can't just go kill people willy nilly. Nitrogen gas, like most forms of oxygen displacement, my understanding is, for the most, as far as we know, it's not particularly painful, right? I mean, carbon monoxide, nitrogen displacement, et cetera, is like basically kind of just like putting them to sleep. They don't really feel dying. Corey, this is okay. You can say that I'm wrong, but this is quite literally what the state's quoting. Like, this is the science that they're quoting when they're saying that nitrogen displacement is not painful.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the state generally, correct me if I'm wrong, at least based off of my reading, like there's not a lot of varies from understanding by jurisdiction, but there's not a lot of medical professionals involved in the death penalty. Even just like with this case, like they already had a botched death penalty because like they couldn't find a vein. Like you think a doctor and a nurse like can't find a vein with enough like effort, where it's like typically or like in a lot of cases medical professionals aren't involved.
I've defended doctors who couldn't find a vein, and then they get sued for not being able to find a vein.
Yeah, no, like totally, it does happen, but like the involvement of medical professionals in death penalty, I think, is whatever. They're not always involved, and like I have no doubt that the state is relying on some form of information to say that it's painless, but I don't think you're going to find very many credible doctors or scientists that's going to say that it's like whatever pain-free or lack suffering. Like no offense, but I don't trust whatever lawyers or legal experts or government officials to understand what oxygen displacement does to an organism.
So I'll look into it. Maybe I could be wrong. My understanding is one of the reasons why carbon monoxide is so dangerous is because you don't know. It's like basically it's like falling asleep, right? It's not something that's going to wake you up when you're asleep. It's something where people have died from carbon monoxide poisoning unintentionally. They don't even know it's happening. They'll be in a car, and then like there'll be an exhaust leak into the car, and they'll die in the car without knowing it's happening, right? Is in this case like nitrogen displacement going to be substantially different than carbon monoxide poisoning?
Okay, so there's a distinction there that is pretty key. Of like, yes, it totally does happen very tragically that whole families die in their homes when they go to bed as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning because they don't know what's going on. Of like, there's symptoms being induced of like nausea, potentially even vomiting, etc. Where like if you don't know. Okay, it can go like unnoticed because like you're under the guise, you don't know that you're being poisoned because like you can breathe in carbon monoxide and it'll feel like you're breathing air. The distinction is like unless this person doesn't know that they're undergoing the death penalty, okay, like it's more akin to drowning. Of like that you're being held underwater and like that you're being deprived of oxygen and there's an understandable state of panic induction.
Sure.
Like this is why
the psychological element to it.
we're trained as well, like this goes back to like lab safety training of like if you because like we work with nitrogen gas and a whole bunch of other gases that will displace oxygen in a lab, and a lab is typically an enclosed space of like, yeah, once you feel these symptoms, like they want you to panic because like you should remove yourself from the premises immediately, because like, yeah, it like if you don't know that it's happening, okay, and you are ignorant of this occurring, I can agree on that baseline that it is probably like not overly cruel, but like I think to me that does not pass the bar when it comes to like you are intentionally basically holding someone underwater.
So I understand the psychological element to it, where there's going to be a level of panic whenever you're being killed, and you could argue that simply that psychological panic and the symptoms there would be enough to justify the argument that it's cruel. For me, that doesn't necessarily make it cruel, right? Like, I think you would. I think I agree with Maja in the sense of there's some ways you can kill somebody that I would consider to be cruel. Like, yeah, we're going to kill you by 1,000,000 cuts. Well, hold on a second, right? That's fair enough. Unusual, though, my original point was that like unusual would be like the death penalty for jaywalking. This would be both cruel and unusual because like not only is you could argue that it's cruel given the circumstances, but it's also like very unusual. Why would you? It doesn't follow the crime. It doesn't match the crime. Meanwhile, like a school shooting, like Tiberius was talking about, killing somebody for that might be relatively like usual. Like we might expect that to be like a response somebody might have. We would certainly do it if we could stop them in the middle of them doing it, right, by killing them. And the Supreme Court agrees with me, and the people who wrote the amendment also agree with me here. Where I think they're wrong is just on the pragmatics of it, which I think is one of the strongest arguments that I've never heard a good response to, which is like, if we could, like, why are we spending all this extra money on doing something we can't take back when there's no scientific literature that I'm aware of that demonstrates the death penalty is significantly more effective at deterring crime than life in prison, right? So if we're not getting a deterrence factor, and we're not getting a cost savings factor, and we're not getting like any of the things that we're looking for when we're talking about criminal justice, it just doesn't seem like a pragmatic outcome. This is why I said it. People say it's a meme a little bit, but I think it's a great idea. Like, instead of killing the people who did horribly wrong things, wouldn't it be better for the victims if like we just made them work and then we took the money they generate and give it to the victims of the crimes they committed? So if you kill like a bunch of kids, like we're going to make you work and then we're going to take all your money and give it to the families of the kids you killed. And if later it turns out you didn't do it, then we can actually let you go and maybe even pay you back at a premium for the work that you did and like try to make your life better, as opposed to, sorry, you're dead now, we can't let you out, right? Which has happened. And it has happened in specific instances in American history, which have been pretty disgusting.
Let's say worst case scenario, you find a person that is like Marquis de Sade level horrible, like has done everything in the book, be caught red-handed in 4K, and you want to put this person into prison for the rest of their life. And somehow during that prison stay, they escape and have a chance to do all that stuff all over again. Would the death penalty have been the better answer in that instance?
Yeah, if you could show me some like crazy El Chapo kind of figure where like we can't keep this guy like locked up, you could convince me that maybe we have to kill this guy, right? Just because of the risk they pose going forward. This isn't the case for American prisoners in a supermax prison.
We already got an example of that. Somebody from the UK, he's very famous, Charles Bronson. Should we have killed Charles Bronson then? Because he escaped for what, 100 and some odd different prisons. Charlie Bronson. I don't know necessarily if we should have, right? What do y'all think? That's somebody
that who this person is.
Yeah, the dude was a monster.
I know that there was a movie made about him. I think. But yeah, well,
no prison could hold him. He broke out every single one.
I don't know when this took place. It's hard for me to imagine that whatever in 2024 we can't design a prison that prevents someone from escape. But I guess anything's possible. But But yeah, my principle still stands. I'm still opposed to the death penalty. But I just want to quickly crystallize my point. So if you had the choice, Lactoid, to die between lethal injection or like we're going to hold your head underwater, which would you prefer?
With water, I would rather have I would rather do nitrogen over injection, but I'd rather do injection over water. I think water would like triggers a specific response. For me, I'm afraid of needles.
You think
I'm like have a phobia of needles. So like I actually might even pick drowning over needles.
you think you're not going to have the same panic? I wish, with your permission, to test out your tolerance for nitrogen gas and how quickly you'll panic.
No, I would panic either way. Look, if my life is in danger, I'm panicking no matter what. Okay, I'd panic for lethal injection. Okay, I'm just saying that like my understanding is that like carbon monoxide poisoning is not going to be the exact same experience as drowning in water.
Actually, recently, I just thought about this. Oh, sorry.
More akin.
I've never died from either, so I guess I don't really know.
And I hope you never die, period. Yeah.
Oh, wow, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So we had that gentleman just like a couple months back that we probably all seen the video where he Spider-Man'd up the wall and got out of prison, and then for like a month there was a manhunt for the guy, and he did some fucked up things. I think he like robbed a family at gunpoint, yada yada yada. Should he be sentenced with the death penalty? Got out, started it. Even when he got out and tried to escape, he didn't leave it for a month. Didn't leave the area and terrorized the area that he was in.
I mean, I think that he deserves the death penalty. I don't think that he should get the death penalty. Like that's the distinction, right? But here's a question. So let's put the constitutionality of on the shelf for the minute. Do you all think that the state, just pretend like the government that we exist in, whatever municipality you have to exist, it doesn't exist, okay? Do you think the state should have the right to take the life away from its citizens?
Yeah.
Why?
Not the states, but maybe the peers.
I don't see a huge delineation between taking the life of somebody and locking them in a small cage forever. Like both seem like equally extensive actions.
And for the person that's at what is like, yeah, making it a bigger thing. If we do decide to kill somebody, it has to be maybe the people of the state or something. They vote upon that. If the jury decides that you do it, not just the jury of the law, but the people around you, that you're inhumane, you got to go. Well, hey, man, but it is.
The state seize all of your property if you've been like arrested? Like, should it be able to seize and to take everything? Like, let's say like you're a millionaire and you've been convicted for murder, right? And you post they tell you to they fine you, you pay the fine, whatever it is, right? But you still have like an enormous mansion, right? You have a mansion, you have a farm, you have all the things. Should the state be able to take truly everything that you own away from you? You think so?
If my understanding, because this is how this works in drugs, if that money is all that stuff is tied to that drug money, they're taking it, right? So if let's just say you were a hitman, right? I'm sure it would work the same way, that all your money came from doing hits. They're taking that shit, every cent.
That's not really what I'm asking. What I'm asking is like at what level should the state be able to take things away from you or restrict your rights because you've violated the law? That's really what I'm asking. Like,
I think if you profitized off of it, yeah.
What if you didn't though? But like, what if you didn't? What if you just are a millionaire? You went out and you're a terrible person. You shot an old lady down the street, but you have this mansion. Should the state be able to seize your mansion and everything that you've ever owned and made? You don't think so?
No, it should go to your family.
I understand that, like, when you die, it will. But like, the point is, should you be able to own it outright in your own name? Like, should the state be able to seize all of your property because you went out and you committed homicide?
No, it should go to the grandma's family. I think
if there's if you are sued in court and there are financial, like you have to pay X amount of money as restitution to the family for your losses, of course they should liquidate your assets and give it to the family.
Hell yeah. Take it all. Give it. This is like, it's so fucking sick. That's what gets me going.
Lactoid, let's go.
No, this is not authority. This is straight up libertarian, right? Like, you violate somebody, they are harmed, you owe them money. And this idea, because currently yeah, we have this ridiculous system where like you know the restitution amounts are like absurdly low, where you have people who are like who are violated, but like let's think of the most like sympathetic example, right? Somebody who's violated as a child, where now they have to like potentially pay for therapy their entire life, potentially because of this event, and like yeah, their perpetrator goes to prison, but like potentially might not have to pay them anything if they can't afford it, or maybe pay them a few $1,000s. You should see some of these fucking restitution amounts that they're actually like handing down. It's nothing. These fuckers are giving them nothing. It's ridiculous. I think it should be very straightforward.
Mhm.
Like you pay the damages, and if you can't afford to pay the damages, we'll find a way to make you pay those damages one way or another. We can build every road in America off this. Okay, I'm just saying, like, and you're talking about like making an example. I think this would also serve as a better deterrent, right? I wouldn't want to commit crime if every time I drive down the highway, I'm looking at all the prisoners building the highway, and I could throw cans at them or rocks and stuff, as opposed to them just being dead and me never seeing
We're
them
gonna
again.
tar and feather people too. All right, this is the part of Lactoid where I can really get on board with, because if I was dealing with Scott, it would be a nightmare. I'd just be like, nah, you gotta fucking deal with that yourself, right? Nah, like this is where it's like, okay, I can at least reach out to you, because it's like, look, we need to have the sovereign be able to collect that like recompense, right? You don't want to do that alone. You don't want people to fucking have to deal with that shit, like as individuals, because you could be completely outmatched, right? That guy who has a mansion, he's got a fucking security detail that's gonna protect his mansion, right? Like, having the arm of the state do this is actually just a win.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and Lactoid makes a good point. There's a lot of things just because optics stop people from doing, right? Like, a lot of people don't become mall cops because you don't want to be a fucking mall cop. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be in the city and then have your homies coming up to be like, hey, yo, snitch, you know? So, yo, being on the fucking chain game on the side of the freeway, and then you got one of your cousins rolling by, hey, jailbird! Ain't nobody. Nah, man, I'm straight.
Wow.
I'd avoid prison. I'd avoid prison.
Social humiliation on top of incarceration. Can't wait. Let's go. Oh man. All right.
Can I just ask a question? So, like, okay, and I think I'm going to go with Tiberius here for a very quick second, because, like, are we thinking, is the purpose of punishment for a crime, is it purely just as a deterrent, or is it just because you did this and you deserve to have this happen to you, right? There are absurd penalties that we give people for committing crimes, right? They're sentenced for 200 years, right? Nobody lives to be 200 years old, right? We don't give them this sentence because, as a deterrent, right? Because they're going to die before like the end of the sentence conceivably ends, right? We do it because we say, this is the action that you've committed a heinous crime, and this is what you deserve to have happen to you. That's why we have absurd counts upon counts, right? So I'm not sure. So if that's the case, I'm not sure that like merely framing it in terms of deterrence or in terms of this isn't going to be effective. I'm not sure if I completely buy that.
I'm not
because
sure.
to buy that, I would have to abandon like the concept of desert, right? Not that I'm going to punish you this way because it will really stop you from doing more bad things. No, I'm punishing you this way because you did something and this is what you deserve to have happen to you.
So generally, and this is what I found because a lot of people don't understand the law. Usually when you see those people, because I love these videos, you'll see the people fainting and shit because they don't understand their sentencing. Usually when a judge hands out, be like, hey, on this count, you're serving 25 years. You got to pay attention to what the judge says. He's like, they will say this is going to be served congruently. That means it's going to be all actively served at the same time. So you may get 5 charges for 25 years.
I think you mean concurrently.
Concurrently, yeah. Sorry, concurrently. Sorry,
Corey, you dick. I didn't say it.
But I was jumping between the two words. Okay, all right.
I would understand.
Anyways,
if prisoners confused if they say this sentence.
Yeah,
but congruently.
So you'll see a lot of these people passing out and stuff like that. But generally, they're only serving 25 years. I'm actually curious when's the last time there's been like a crazy long sentence for like 150 or 100 plus years has actually been given out. If it's even been recent.
We've seen a couple on TV recently. right?
recent
Like
ones?
like some of these bigger high profile cases, it's like you're literally in jail for the next 300 years. But obviously we can't do that, which is like Fairy Queen's on board with me now. It's just like there's certain points where it's like, look, like if we have like beyond a shadow of a doubt, no, you fucking did it. But more in particularly, like, you know, we're gonna like put you behind bars for 300 years. Fucking just shoot the bastard. Like that's what you like. You just not deserve.
But the highways,
God
but
damn.
the highways, Tiberius, the highways. I'm telling you.
I was about to
I
say
would
that.
rather kill people than make them slaves. I think that's more
free
like
labor, bro.
Oh,
Mike.
So community service, that's too brutal, okay? But like killing them, that's, you know.
What? Well, all right, fine. Depending on how this goes, right? Like the like community service for like small time offenses where it's like, hey, you know, here's your 70 hours of community service. I like, okay, I'll float you with that. But like, I don't want to make some people a slave for like murdering 8 kids. I want to fucking send them straight to the depths of the ether.
Tiberius, I'm amazed as a 40K fan that you think this way. Everybody has their place in service to
they
the
can
Emperor.
join Nurgle in hell.
They can be a servitor, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like, hey, they got a place. You know,
I mean, granted, if you wanted to give somebody like superhuman treatment, like I'm on board with that. Like, there's a level where that is its own hell. Like, I'm okay, fine. But personally, I'd rather not deal with them.
A Passion of the Christ type of situation. Have you seen them?
I'm not sure where you're going with this, Corey.
Well, you said you're in favor of
hands and stuff, and
probably not. But I don't know.
So the door's open a little bit. You could be.
Well, okay, so
not.
like there's a problem here in my head, right? They're like, okay. People are like, oh, we have to kill people, but we have to kill them ethically, which is kind of fucking weird, and I can't believe that comes out of people's mouths, but whatever. Like, if we decide to kill people, I really don't give a shit too much about how they're killed, although I would put in a preference, like, how are they, you know, if they killed somebody to get there to that point, we should probably, like, kill them in the same way they killed other people, you know? So if you, like, threw somebody through a trash compactor, we will return the favor.
Well, hold on.
Of that,
there's limits on that, though, right? Just to be clear.
Probably.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anyway, yeah, probably. Anyway, I part of me wants to really meme at you right now, but I'm just gonna.
I'm just thinking like let's imagine the most horrific. We found out he kept somebody in the basement for like 18 days, and like, okay, now we're gonna keep this guy in a basement for 18 days. Like, you want that?
Just throw him in solitary for 18 days and let him starve? Ooh, that kind of sounds nice. It's like, you want to do this to other people? How do you like it having done to you? This sounds fun. Let's do it. By the way, just because I've gotten so many people to agree with me, can you bring in iCow to actually tell me why I'm wrong?
No, I explicitly do not agree with you.
What if he gorged himself on human flesh? Like, there's so many different levels to this.
You're always going to be the outlier, Corey.
I want to quickly. Oh yeah, Corey, you can. Ico can.
Well, someone in the chat was asking Lactoid what retribution is.
Yeah, well, so I guess I can just run through this. So, like, generally speaking, this is less of a. I mean, I guess this is technically a legal thing, but this is just kind of a general idea. There's typically in criminology 5 different main motivations for punishment, which is retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, rehabilitation, and reparation. I don't care at all about retribution. I know a lot of people do. This concept of like inner justice. Oh, we gotta fucking get him. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like built different. Maybe a little bit robotic. I don't really care. I don't feel a lot of like intent to retribute. But I think the other 4 are, you know, the death penalty, I guess, does fulfill the retribution. But like my slavery proposal or life in prison, even, I think fulfills the other 4. With exception to reparation, actually, and this is going to be my argument for why I think my proposal is better, is because neither life in prison nor the death penalty fulfills the reparation element of punishment, which I think is the most important element of punishment, actually. And so I guess of the 5 major justifications, I mean, is anybody? I'm just curious. Will anybody here come out and say that retribution is more important than reparation?
Yo, I am totally
I'm on the same page as you.
this.
Retribution is not a justification.
Lactoids for reparations. I am totally clipping this. This is
wait.
Lactoid out of context. Let's go.
4K.
So, how about this? Somebody proposed in the chat that we use certain people for testing purposes instead of animals. So if that person being tested on ends up being a cure for cancer or some other horrible thing, would that meet the reparations portion of it? Like they've been a benefit to society?
Potentially, it might fulfill that purpose, I guess.
What do you mean when you say reparations? Do you just mean paying damages to the person or like handing over property? Like, is that what you mean? Or do you mean like restorative, like the victim has to sit in a therapy session, like with the person who hurt them?
It could be a number of things. Typically, it's referred to in the sense of financial recompense. But there have been, especially recently, new programs literally called reparative justice, which I don't know how effective it really is, but they'll take perpetrators and victims of a crime, basically do group therapy with them to try to help the victim get over what happened to them. If the evidence shows that it works, great. I think that I love the idea of victim-centered punishment in the sense of we're just trying to, like, obviously this was the person hurt, so we're trying to make their lives better. I get that. But I'm a little bit skeptical sometimes about how effective it really is. I think the money aspect of being able to pay them to go get their own therapy if they want, or whatever else they want, could be better.
All right. So I think we've pretty much taken this full course, and I think Lactoid came up with a great answer. We're bringing back the chain gangs worldwide. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Any closing statements on this one? And then we'll go ahead and go to open because I don't want to hold anybody hostage here.
I'll do a closing, I guess, of sorts. I think there's also I don't know which of the 5, Lactoid, that you're talking about, but there's one of the 5 that is like protecting society from that person being able to do crimes in the future.
Incapacitation, yeah.
Incapacitation. Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's what's mentioned. Like, so a lot of people don't really fully understand like the church's position on this, because the church technically is for the right of the state to have the death penalty, but then the church's stance is also that we're not under a circumstance where that can be exercised today. And the example that I heard earlier, like about somebody who just like continually can escape and would be a threat to society, that would be an example of something where even the church would say that the death penalty is justified. If there's no other way to protect society, right? The most obvious example here is Joker, right? I'm against the death penalty, but even I think Batman should kill the Joker. Or more to the point, like the city of Gotham ought to execute the Joker. Not because of retribution, not because it's going to make anybody whole, but because there's just no way to stop him from getting out and killing again. At that point, it becomes self-defense. So that would be my one sort of exception, is the one that's mentioned in the Catechism, which is if you can find a scenario in which there's no other way to protect society, then and only then can you go through with it.
I just have two. I think 2 quick questions. So I proposed this, I think, on a panel just recently, also about the death penalty. So does it move the needle of for anybody where if we ever get to the place in whatever 10, 20, 30 years of we have brain implants that can essentially reprogram someone, where this rehabilitation aspect is pretty much open to us, or we know enough about the brain that we can essentially target a targeted lobotomy, sort of analogous to perfect chemical castration of this person has no risk of reoffending because either they're reprogrammed or that brain structure is not there. Does that move the needle for anybody in terms of whoever's pro death penalty? Does that affect your decision whatsoever if we actually know?
100%. Yeah, okay. 100%. So
interesting. And then another quick question: since I'm Canadian like Lactoid, do you think prisoners should have access to medical assistance in dying, as in actual voluntarily getting lethal injection?
No, I don't think so, because and I can be corrected on this, but I'm pretty sure isn't it the responsibility of prison guards to make sure that prisoners don't commit suicide? I think that's a very frequent responsibility of prison guards, is to make sure they're not allowed to just leave the prisoner if he's tying bed sheets together and trying to hang himself in his cell, right?
Didn't work for Epstein.
We can change the responsibilities of like prison guards pretty simply. Like, since you have access to medical assistance, you are no longer responsible to prevent the suicide of inmates. I think that's an easy fix. So, like, in that case, like, good.
I mean, presumably, like, if you are arrested, you've already lost the rights to decide, like, what to do with, unironically, that's, like, why we're talking about the death penalty anyway, right? You've lost the right, to decide what to do with your own body as it is regardless, right?
I don't know
if you don't have the right to, like,
they don't have the right to refuse healthcare, as in, like, this medical experimentation is on the table for you, like, so, like, whatever. If you
just asked a second ago whether or not a brain chip could be implemented into their head if it could rehabilitate them. You literally just advocated for medical experimentation. What do you mean?
Get them.
This is basically
that's actually what you said.
So these are two separate questions. So like
no, it's not. What if it's medical experimentation for the benefit of the state? Is that going to be okay? It's just about how many people benefit from it, right?
It depends. Like, so I think there's a difference between, like, if we're gonna use these prisoners to test our new shampoo versus whatever, a new cancer treatment. Those are two separate things in my mind, but maybe not for everybody. I'm separating these concepts out of, like, perfect rehabilitation versus access to, at least in Canada, access to healthcare. In some
brain chip that will be put in your head. My answer to your question, even though I am against the death penalty, would have been absolutely not to the question that you posed earlier.
Okay.
I would stop them from killing themselves because they're stealing labor away from the victim's family.
Oh, lactoid. That is good stuff.
He just can't help himself sometimes, man. He just has to do it.
I look at it like you're killing, or that you're effectively just killing somebody to that degree. Like, you're literally overriding them. And do you want to see Travelers by chance? Like, that's exactly what you're doing to somebody. It's like you're literally just, like, overriding, like, who they are to a point where they are somebody else entirely.
Yeah, I understand that. That's a valid argument.
Right. So, any other closing statements? Otherwise, we're going to go to open, and people are free to come and go as they choose.
Did I have anything else to add? Fuck. Sorry, I had to bring in the dogs earlier. They were getting a little noisy. This was fun. Thank you.
I'll do a quick closing.
Excellent.
If you want more based opinions, you can find me at Lactoid TV everywhere. Thanks.
I guess.
Are you
Always get your shameless plug. Get your shameless plugs in. Let's go.
All right. You can find me at Majin BMac on Twitch. Also, I always do this on every show that I go on. Please check out my buddy Solus the PG. You can find him on Spotify, YouTube, everywhere. The kid's dope. Dude's literally, I'm not capping. You get back at me, all right? You could pack me up if you don't agree, but the kid is literally right now the next J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar. Please check him out.
Excellent. And I still got smoke for that dude. Fairy Queen, where can we find you?
You can find me at Fairy Queen's Cottage on YouTube and at Fairy3_Queen on Twitter.
Excellent. And Corey?
On Twitch, twitch.tv CoreyCam84, and everywhere else, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, it's Corey Campbell.
Excellent. Appreciate all of you. It's been a great conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to open. If anybody wants to excuse themselves,
Out of here, y'all.
It's been great having you. Have a good
See you,
night,
Maj. It's
Majin.
great to have you.
having you on.
Later.
Pleasure, everyone.
And switching the scene up.
I can stay for like a few more minutes
now
if somebody
we're
has
blue.
like a specific problem with me, but otherwise I'll be off the bounce pretty soon.
I always have a problem with you. What are you talking about?
Oh, sure, but you had an
There were a
opportunity to
couple
voice
people,
them.
and they've been waiting.
It's a love-hate relationship. You know, we'll make it work.
It's all love.
I'm actually waiting for. I appreciate it, buddy. I'm actually waiting for Rich to get back. I wanted to. He was supposed to post up some news today about the economy, but he didn't bother to get back to me yet. So I guess smack him.
All right, my voice probably sounds like shit, but hi guys.
Hey, Vigilante.
Hello.
Hey, Vigilante.
How's everybody doing today?
Fine
I'm all
and
right.
dandy,
How's the
my
new
friend.
job?
How are you?
Well, I mean, it's been going good, except for the fact that I've been sick for the past few days, so I couldn't work.
That's too bad.
Feel
I'm
bad.
sorry. Hope you get some chicken
Eh.
noodle. Feel better soon.
I'm starting to feel better.
Got
You should be able to
So
get retribution
I-
for whoever got you sick.
Yeah.
I actually know who
Reparation for
probably
whoever
got
got
me
you
sick.
Fine with that too.
I actually know who probably got me sick, anyways. But I've been keeping notes since the beginning of the panel, and honestly, most of them are actually on you, Lactoid. But
I'm sure I'm on lists
Uh,
on the internet. Yeah, for sure.
The last one I had was the brain reprogramming thing, but Corey left, so I'm just going to delete that. So I'll start with the reparations versus retribution argument. I'm going to be completely honest with that. Most people who are victims, or like most victims' families, at least in my opinion, are not, especially when it comes to like sex crimes, are not going to favor reparations over retribution, because the way that people who are victims are going to victims see it, actually they want justice, which would be more akin to retribution than the reparations, because simply because of the fact of the reparations aspect is more so going to feel like the system paying people off for what happened to them. And like, this is actually coming from somebody who is the victim of a sex crime. I have no problem with talking about this on stream. I've talked about it before. Fairy Queen, you were there literally the last time I talked about it on stream. Yeah. Like, I personally, like, and I 100% support the death penalty for sex crimes, especially pedophiles, rapists, etc. I would be more happy if the bitch that fucking raped me got sentenced to death than if she got sentenced to slavery, to basically pay me for the rest of her life or some shit.
So I think that while people could say, and perhaps even very genuinely say, that they would prefer like the feeling of retribution to monetary payments that kind of like facilitate future help throughout the rest of their lives, I don't actually think this is good for people in the long run, right? I don't think revenge is particularly mentally healthy. I don't think it leads to long-term healing. I don't think it leads to overall societal beneficial effects. What I'm thinking of is like a lifetime of therapy paid for by the perpetrator probably is going to help somebody a lot more than just kind of I guess I would argue, the kind of cold feeling of revenge. And I also don't know if it's a good thing for us to be incentivizing people to want revenge. I don't think revenge is a particularly healthy emotion, or I guess emotion. I'm not even sure that's the right word. Like, vindictiveness is not the best emotion to foster. We should be focused more on just helping facilitate a person's healing, as opposed to just satisfying whatever they say they want now, which is, I guess, in the extent of the death penalty, I don't think is actually going to help them long term, psychologically.
I actually would agree with you in terms of financial damages and in terms of like making the victim pay, not the victim, excuse me, like the perpetrator pay the victim. Like, in terms of financial debt, where it gets tricky, I suppose, like, is the question of the group therapy, as specifically related to sex crimes. I could see that in particular being very ripe for abuse, particularly with some particular types of sex crimes, where the victim is then bullied by their family or by their friends to go have a restorative therapy group with a perpetrator that they don't really want to forgive, but are forced to sort of forgive to go along with essentially what the community wants them to do. That's the concern that I would have in that. But I'm with you as far as like financial reparations.
I totally share that same concern, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at before, where I'm skeptical about like I think it's called restorative or reparative justice. Like, it doesn't just mean like money payments from the perpetrator to the victim. It's like this weird group therapy session with the perpetrator and the victim together. I always thought that was weird, and like, you always wonder, is there some kind of social pressure on the victim to like have to sit in a room with their perpetrator? I don't like that. I would rather like give the victim the freedom to be able to choose to go seek out help on their own time, but on the perpetrator's dime.
So, I mean, I can get where you're coming from with that, but at the same time, I also support universal healthcare, including for mental health specifically. So, and the system that I would like to see us implement, that would basically be useless anyways, because we would already have free access to mental health.
Sure. And then in my system, there wouldn't be universal healthcare. So this would be a way to make sure that I hear you though. In a universal healthcare system, victims would have access to this, assuming that it's done like with a big enough budget and it's done like as comprehensive as you would want it to be. Then it would be redundant, at least from like the victim sense. But I mean, then at the very least, even if you had a universal healthcare system, couldn't like the labor from the criminals at least like help offset some of the costs now that the government has to spend on paying for everyone's healthcare?
I mean, theoretically, it could. Because especially if we had them like working on roads and stuff, and, like doing construction and stuff, it would save a lot of money.
Are we suggesting that like that they just get medical health care, like the victims would just get medical health care, that's all they would get for being a victim of a crime like that?
No. They would get money, and then like it would be enough money for them to like get therapy, perhaps take time off work, whatever you would use money to help facilitate your healing.
Okay, but like, I mean, I just think back to lawsuits with this, right? And this is more civil law, so it's not as applicable, but there is the damages that you sustained, and then past that, there's punitive damages. And those are two different judgments that a jury hand out in a civil lawsuit is damages, like actual damages and punitive damages. And that punitive damages is above and beyond what you already owe. I would apply the same to these prisoners, is that they would have to pay the punitive damages as well, not just the actual damages.
Sure. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I definitely think it should be at a premium, because we want to make sure the victims, like, we want to err on the side of making sure they're made whole. And so we would make sure the amount was set at something that we'd all agree on, I guess, as a society and be comfortable with. I just think that, again, like in the long run, especially without universal healthcare, I think this, like the direct benefit's obvious, right? But even with universal healthcare, you could use the money to offset the cost of the state, but you could also even still give the money to the victim, even if they're getting free therapy and stuff. Because let's say, you're the victim of a sex crime, and you're getting the free therapy from the universal healthcare system, but like because of what happened to you, you also like need to take off like a year off work or something along those lines, and now you have bills to pay still, like, because I'm guessing not everything's going to be free. Well, money from the perpetrator is going to help facilitate that time off that you need. So in either system, I think overall it'd be more beneficial to just focus, like pull away from this sort of like fulfilling the sense of revenge, and more of a, how do we make you more comfortable as you work through your own process to heal from what happened to you.
So how would you stop this from getting abused? How would you stop the system from getting abused by like certain gangs that are going to say that we'll take care of your family once you're gone if you take this hit for us, or basically someone would rather be in jail, because there are those people that would rather be in jail. It's just more comfortable to them. It's what they know. So they end up committing like petty crimes to get themselves put back in, and it's just a continuous process of this. There are those types of people, so like them striking up basically a deal with somebody where they commit some horrendous crime against them, and they never really did, but he admits to doing it. She says it happened, and it's something that happens. Like, let's just say it's rape, for example. It's something that happens in a private area. Like, how would you get away from this being abused to where he's like, okay, you get free, you get like free healthcare, you get all these punitive damages and all this shit, and I get to go where I want to go. So here, deal. And then how do you prevent that from being exploited like that?
Because the money is not going to be coming just from the state willy-nilly. It's going to be the money generated from the forced labor that we're going to make the prisoner do. So it's not going to be like a pretty life. I'm thinking relatively brutal. Just not necessarily from like a punishment perspective, but just from like a labor extraction perspective, right? I'm thinking, you don't have to go this far, but like we can use higher tech methods than whips. We could use like electroshock collars to ensure that like somebody's working 12 hours a day constantly. Like there's things we can do to like make sure that we're getting as much money out of them as possible to get to the victim.
You've got vigilante interested.
Here's a question. So if you could put a chip into the person that's enslaved's brain to make them work just that much faster and that much harder,
yes,
to extract that much more labor, you think you would be okay with that? You think that would be just
absolutely.
Isn't
Now
meth
you're
cheaper? Meth is cheaper. I thought that's what it was made for.
We could also do math, yeah.
Oh, it's for the Germans, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, no, not like us. Like
German
I'm not
used.
going to do math, but I mean the prisoners maybe, sure.
Well, I'm saying the Germans gave the Nazis soldiers meth because it kept them up, it kept them productive, and they didn't have to sleep as much.
I'm pretty sure the Russians used. I'm pretty sure the Russians used meth for that too.
Looking good, Sprout. Got the fresh white tee, the fresh shaved sides.
Thanks,
Come
I
here looking
appreciate
fresh.
it. Got a haircut today, so I got rid of the fucking
You cut more off
shaggy
than
hair.
I did.
That's all I had on the death penalty conversation. Ty did a good job at defending that. I had
I appreciate that.
I had a few points on the first conversation though.
Sure. What do you
So
got?
like there at the beginning there, Lactoid, it seemed like you were conflating revenge porn with illegal distribution, illegal redistribution. Whenever you did the comparison of like if somebody deleted a porn video and then people kept reposting it, that wouldn't necessarily be revenge porn. That would be illegal redistribution of a video or of copyrighted content, which are two completely
You wouldn't
different
even need to put
things.
copyright. It's name, image, and likeness. Someone making money off of your name, image, and likeness is already illegal, unless you've sold away your name, image, and likeness.
The reason I was comparing the two is not necessarily to like. I understand there legally is a difference, but I'm not talking about like the current legal difference. I'm talking about like the principle of privacy, right? This concept of privacy. If you post like a porn video and then delete it, but people keep sharing it, I don't think that's wrong necessarily because it was public and there was no expectation of privacy when it was shared. So this is why I was explaining like with revenge porn, if that same situation's kind of happening where there's not a sufficient expectation of privacy when the porn is taken, then I don't think that like sharing it out of revenge is necessarily wrong. I can imagine
What if the
instances in which it
person
is
got
wrong.
like? What if the person got like super drunk, right? And they just got super drunk, and did something stupid, like ran outside without their clothes on, etc., and so on. First off, they have no ability to consent at this point. There's no ability for them to consent. So would a recording of this person naked and obviously plastered, no ability to consent, be okay to send out because it's at a party that publicly pretty much everyone was invited, but there's not a quote unquote expectation of privacy, but she's in no way mentally capable of consent.
The standard that I said before during the first part was both parties believed or should have believed that the content was not going to be visible to other parties. If you're recording somebody running around outside naked, I don't think that you have there's a reasonable expectation on you to believe that this isn't visible to other parties. So you should be able to record it and share it if you're the drunk maniac running around outside. I think this happened with like one of the founders of that one like Coney 2012 like scam or whatever. Like he kind of.
No, I'm saying inside the privacy of a house. It's a party. Like
no. You said run out in the street.
It's not. It's no. I said inside. I said at a party. Did something stupid.
Okay.
Came out. What I meant by came out was like out of a bedroom, out of something, like out of the bathroom. I don't care. Out of somewhere to the general party and was walking around the party kind of just absolutely naked, and they are drunk, obviously drunk enough to where they cannot consent.
I guess it depends on the context, but generally speaking, under the standard that I set, I think you probably could still record them and post it. I have a little bit of.
Do
a
you
weird
view that
belief,
as morally correct? I realize you.
it's
You
not
would view it
morally
as legally
wrong.
correct. Do you view it as morally correct?
I don't view it as like necessarily morally problematic. At most, you could say that like it's a dick move, right? Literally and figuratively.
But you wouldn't see it as problematic. How would you not see it as problematic?
Well,
You're
again,
taking advantage of someone. You're taking advantage of someone when they are inebriated and unable to consent.
no, so you're not really taking advantage of
Yes.
somebody. You're like
You
just,
are.
you are in public doing something that you normally do, and then they run out and flash everyone, right? Like this would be like if I'm in a classroom, like recording my like students for some reason. Let's say I'm a teacher, and then like some naked guy runs in the classroom. No, like the naked guys should get arrested because he's the one that just like came out and violated all of our consents. If we want to be really like strict about it, like we were
Like I
here
said, it's
doing
at a
this
private
thing.
house. It's at a party.
Right. It depends.
And-
It
and
depends on the
when-
kind
when-
of party. Like if it's the kind of party where it's like, hey, some of us might get naked, don't record. Then that's probably you do have an expectation of privacy, right? But if it's not that kind of party, right? If it's like a local church gathering, and all of a sudden, like Jones, who had way too much of the fucking wine up at the front, like starts running around taking his pants off, then it's kind of on Jones.
You don't think it's so you don't believe the person has to be able to consent to being so. You said all parties are aware that it's kind of like a private area, or all parties are aware that there's that this should not be a something that's kept between the two.
Let me explain it.
Wait, 1 second. When you are drunk, you lose that inebriation. You lose that ability to consent. You lose that ability to say yes or no. That's why when you're plastered, you can't get a tattoo. When you're plastered, you can't buy a car. There are legal protections to someone who is drunk that they are not able to do these things because they're not thinking the right phrase of mind, and they don't have the ability to consent to whatever this is. So you're ripping away that person's basically non-ability to consent and say, no, this person can consent as much as a non-inebriated person in the same situation.
No. So you're misunderstanding me. The standard that I said is in order for there to be an implied expectation of privacy, the expectation of the privacy, both parties, or I guess all parties involved, believe or should have believed that the content was not going to be visible or accessible to other parties outside of those specific parties that are involved in the action. And this is obvious, and I think that you would have to agree that it's obvious. Sprout, let's say I get drunk.
No, you can't even sign a contract when you're drunk.
Let's say I get drunk at a football game and I run out onto the field and I'm recorded my dick flopping around everywhere as I'm running across the field. Did FIFA violate my consent? Because I can't consent being drunk, right? So didn't they record me against my consent?
I would argue a private party is different than out in public, which is why I used a private house.
Well, the question is, like,
I would argue that
the line between public and private is gray. Okay, so a stadium, perhaps you're saying, is public. What if it's a very large house party? Like, what's really the difference between like a giant house party that's sufficiently large enough and a stadium? What if you have a party at a stadium?
A stadium is being recorded almost 24/7. Is being put on the TV. Like there's a huge difference.
Yeah, but
like,
I'm drunk. I can't consent to that.
I don't know any big house party that has like live cameras streaming to Fox.
Well, hold on. But let's say there's like so people don't record shit at house parties. That's not an expectation. Of course, that's an expectation. In the same way that it's an expectation that there's going to be recordings at a stadium. But again, under your standard,
in the same way a drunk person can't ascertain that.
Yeah. Okay.
They're inebriated.
So I'm inebriated. I can't ascertain that FIFA's recording me, right? So FIFA's in trouble if they record me as I'm naked
That's a whole
streaking
different
across.
level of ascertation.
Why is it? I'm drunk. You just said drunk people can't consent. I can't sign a contract.
Right, but what I'm saying is that's a whole different level of ascertation, right?
Why?
Yes.
Why? Why is it a total level?
If someone's drunk, they might be able to discern. If someone's drunk, they might be able to discern there's cameras filming people. They might be able to discern, oh shit, that's a camera. When you're drunk, you don't lose any memory. You don't lose like, oh shit, I don't know what a camera is anymore. I forgot the internet exists. Like that's not what happens when you get drunk. But at a private house party, there's not as much of an ascertation, even when not inebriated, that there's going to be recordings.
Yeah, if the party is private enough.
Okay.
If the party,
with that
hold on,
being said,
sir.
Let him finish, bro.
Jesus Christ.
I literally
said,
and then I was continuing.
No. I literally said, like, yes, you could give me some kind of party in which I would agree with you the circumstances would be thus that there would be a reasonable expectation of privacy. Okay, there could be these kind of parties, but that wasn't your argument. You're saying that a drunk person can't consent to this, right? And so if you're drunk, ascertaining shouldn't even be a part of this if we're talking about the hard line that you set, which is drunk people can't consent. They can't consent to tattoos.
They can't.
Even if they could ascertain what the tattoo looked like, you still brought up how they can't consent to tattoos and they can't consent to contracts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So why is it that they also can't consent then, you would have to argue, to FIFA recording their schlong as they're streaking, right?
There is, again, there's a huge difference between the two. If you are at a stadium, you have the full known knowledge that there are cameras. There's not a full known knowledge. Wait 1 second. It doesn't matter if you're drunk or not.
audience.
You know that cameras are fucking recording. One of them, you
No,
don't know
I'm
the
so
cameras
drunk.
are
I'm so
recording.
drunk I don't.
Even
I'm so
if
drunk
you're
I don't.
sober.
No, I'm so drunk I don't know the cameras are recording at FIFA.
You're so drunk you don't think cameras are recording a professional game.
I'm that drunk. Now
Then
FIFA's
you, my
violating
friend,
me,
are
right?
dying of alcohol poison.
No. Now FIFA's violating me because I'm so drunk I don't know they're recording the game. I think, I'm just running across a football stadium.
No, you're dying of alcohol poisoning at that point. If you're so
Alcohol
drunk you
affects
don't
everyone
realize the
differently.
game is being recorded.
Okay, just deal with the
What?
hypothetical. Deal with the hypothetical. Alcohol affects everyone differently. Let's say I'm the kind of alcoholic that if I get really drunk, I don't know where I am, even if I'm not dying of alcohol poisoning, and I'm streaking across a stadium, and I don't think I'm being recorded. It's not like occurring to me. Like, is FIFA violating me? That's the question.
I would argue yes. I would argue cameras have to turn away.
Yeah, I don't think it really works that way, but
If someone comes out
What
on
up,
the
Jesus?
field and not wearing clothes, I think cameras got to turn away.
they'll just edit it out.
And
Yeah,
on
a lot of times it's either edited out or
If
they
cameras
turn it away.
cameras can't turn, you can't distribute that video.
And on that note, I no longer consent to being filmed. I am tired. I am
Have a
now
good
going to
night.
turn this camera away. Please do not AI me. Thank you all. Find me at Fairy Queen's Cottage. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. It was tons of fun talking to you. Have a great night. Bye,
a good
everybody.
night.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
Later, Fair Queen.
All right, Lethe, turn her camera back on.
Tasty. She did not consent.
But yeah, no,
Oh my
they. The reason they can't show that on TV is that has nothing to do.
Well,
with
there's TV.
consent.
There's
It's
TV
due
rules,
to-
right?
Yeah, it's because of TV rules.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is that they shouldn't be able to distribute that video. Even if the cameras do record it, they shouldn't be able to distribute the video. There should be a law against distribution of that. In whatever form that might be. It might be posting on Twitter. It might be a whole number of different things, but they should not be able to distribute it.
Yeah, for me, it's not like a consent-based question, right? Like, if I'm out in the street and a news agency pulls up to me and like is recording me, they don't need to ask me first, because like privacy is not the same kind of thing as physical contact, right? It's based on a negative contract. It's not like a positive thing that you have to contract to. It's not the baseline. It's something that has to be agreed upon. So being drunk in public, if someone records your schlong, I think that should be on you, just straight up.
Again,
And if the party's big enough, if the party's big enough to be
public, you're at a party which was publicly like invited everybody, right? You're not.
then it's
You're not
public.
on public. You're on private property.
No. By public here, I'm not necessarily referring to like, because the stadium is also potentially privately owned. I'm not talking about like ownership. I'm just talking about like public in terms of
Very
is it-
small time.
But like, it doesn't change the calculus. If you had a giant stadium that was owned by just some random guy, that doesn't mean that it's not like in public, as opposed to like it being owned by the city. Like, and if a city owned like a small little like cubicle room or whatever, I might have the expectation of privacy in there, even though it's not necessarily privately owned. It's about like, again, going back to the definition that I used, which I think I keep convincing myself of it because I think it works for almost every situation now. Whether or not all parties involved believed or should have believed that the content was not going to be visible or accessible to other parties. And if that's not there, then there's no privacy.
disregarded the capability of believing that?
It's if
What's up,
both
Samantha?
parties believed or should have believed that the content was not going to be visible to other parties. So if it requires both parties to believe this. So if only one party believes this,
Or should have believed.
Or should
no,
have-
it
or should
requires
have believed.
both parties should have believed. So,
I know, I
should
said it.
someone who does not have the capability of believing, should they have believed if they don't have the capability of believing?
no, I guess not.
And you agree?
So somebody
you
posed a
agree
pretty
with
good
this
question.
is-
What if the drunk person is a minor?
It's already illegal to videotape that, and if you do accidentally videotape it, it has to be deleted, not distributed. So, I mean, it's already illegal to do that.
I would think that'd be
I would
wrong.
assume so.
I would think that I could entertain laws against that, not based on violation by the recording, but the actual distribution of the product itself being CP is what it is. That you could justify laws against that based on that reason.
What about I don't know. I don't know. Like what about non-consensual porn? Right? Like this isn't it wasn't consented to be porn. But hey, look, there it is. Like, what if someone like had an Airbnb and had like an Airbnb? Let's say Airbnb let like their renters create their own contract.
That's an entire different like thing. You're talking about like people putting like hidden stuff in an Airbnb or filming porn non-consensually.
Yeah, but they signed the terms and conditions, and it was
that is different than something called legally the reasonable expectation of privacy.
But what if they signed away? What if they signed the terms and conditions that they knew that they knew the house was going to be filmed?
Then that's on them for not having better reading skills and comprehension.
Okay. I mean, no one reads terms and conditions. Everyone just I have read and agreed to the terms and conditions.
That's your fault. That is your fault.
Look, if you saw like if it's clearly visible like on the contract, we're gonna record you at all times, and you sign it, and you fuck.
No, it just says the house. It says the inside of the house is recorded. Basically, it just says the inside of the house is recorded. That you don't think that means the fucking bedroom, right? You think the bedroom should be private. In your mind, it would make sense that the bedroom would be private. So you don't think that would include the bedroom, but ta-da, it does, and you're on Pornhub.
No, that's against the law for a different reason, right? So it being filmed, right, and you sign that's one thing, right? Now you're getting something that's distributed onto a pay site.
I wouldn't draw a distinction there. My issue would be, it's again about whether or not they should have believed it. So if you are, and this might be even a question for a jury, right? When the person drafting the contract who owns the Airbnb, should they have believed, right, that this was going to be like a private exchange, or that this person believed it was going to be a private exchange, right? And then there'd just be an argument over how clear the contract is, right? But if the contract's clear, where it says we're going to record the inside of the house, I think, yeah, and they record you having sex inside the house, I would be okay with them sharing it on Pornhub.
But legally, there is a difference between like the filming and then like distributing and sale of said film.
Legally speaking, but I'm just saying like what I would like to see happen. Yeah.
So somebody's trying to figure out the difference between a minor that can't consent, because that's why it's illegal to begin with, is minors can't consent to such and such. Being drunk, you are in a position where you cannot consent. So would that not be an equal standard?
If you're recording a crowd at Times Square, like there's going to be children in that crowd, and you can film them.
Right, but we're talking about Sprout scenario of somebody gets totally wasted, loses control of themselves, disrobes, whether they be a minor or just a drunk person in general. The lack of being able to consent, does this apply in both instances? And
I mean, based on legal standards, I believe so in most states.
Legally, they would have to prove that you were aware that it was a minor that you were filming.
I don't.
Because so there's circumstances, things like this have happened, right? So there's bars that had issues, right, with people getting in and they were underage, and this is a place where you have to have your ID checked at the door. You have reasonable expectation that everybody once you pass that door is 21 and over. So in different circumstances, it's going to be determined by a group of people and prosecutors and whatnot, even if you did anything wrong, due to you having reasonable expectation that in the specific environment that you are in, you were able to believe that everybody is in there is above the age of 21.
It depends on the state. So I know California has a mistake of fact statute, but a lot of states don't, my state included. So even if you have reason to believe that somebody's 21, it doesn't matter, right? If anything happens with them that shouldn't be happening with a minor, you're still in trouble. Even if you have more than a reasonable basis to believe, even if they show you a fake birth certificate that could fool the FBI, and it says that they're over 18, in a lot of states that's not a defense. It just doesn't matter at all. California is different though. I'm pretty sure California does have a mistake of fact. I don't know if other states do. I know California might. I don't want to say the word no. I highly suspect that California does, based on what I've read, and other states might, but a lot of states don't. So you got to be careful about that. And if you go to a bar, just because someone's at a bar doesn't mean that they're of age. So check fucking IDs.
Well, that wasn't necessarily what I'm saying. A minor cannot consent just on the basis of being a minor. A drunk person cannot consent based on being just irrevocably drunk. What differentiates the two?
I mean, I got a whole different theory about this, but it gets into I distinguish drunk people from children in the sense of, I think that there's some inconsistency with how we apply the concept of drunk people not being able to consent. Right? We're perfectly willing to hold drunk people accountable for their actions, which we should. But for some reason, we also kind of hold this parallel, inconsistent belief that they also can't consent, despite the fact that as an adult, they consented to putting themselves in this mind state. It's kind of a weird system. I think drunk people can consent.
Okay,
legally speaking, this gets a little bit weird because there's inconsistencies in the laws. The biggest example of this is if you're too drunk, the law in a lot of places generally is that if someone has sex with you, it could be rape, right? But being drunk is not a defense if you rape somebody. You're still going to be held responsible for that. So you're responsible for your decisions if you're the bad one, but you're not responsible for your decisions. But you're not responsible for your decisions if you choose to have sex. It's a weird system, but it's the way the law works. But I don't agree with it.
Okay. See, that's where I think you and Sprout were missing each other. We was trying to see the levels of consent necessary. That makes sense. All right. So everybody just kind of dipped off, but all the same.
I mean, I'm listening, but I mean, I'm at work. I'm just here to listen.
Yeah, we're pushing a little bit late, so I'm gonna bounce, guys. Really appreciate the panel.
Yeah.
Lethe, as always, very, very awesome. Appreciate all of you and everyone who challenged me. Love it. Thanks.
You had a great showing tonight. Appreciate you being here. It was a blast.
I love Lactoid.
Love you guys.
Lactoid's dope.
My favorite race realist.
No, I'm not a race realist. That's a lie.
I'm kidding.
You can make those jokes in private, but not in public.
I just did. So you're wrong.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Lactoid TV. Really appreciate all of your amazing viewership. The comments were awesome tonight. The viewership was awesome tonight. Fucking awesome. I thought the topics were great as well. Really appreciate it. For all of you who subbed or followed or gave bits, thank you. It was I really appreciate it as always. If you like the content but you're not following, please consider giving me a follow. That way you can see more content like this in the future, and you give me just tremendous levels of confidence, which I always appreciate. As I said before, this week is a cool week for content because we had a panel on Monday, we had one today, and we're also going to be having some content this Friday. It's not really going to be a political panel necessarily. It's going to be the trial of our friend Adarius, also known as Adarius, also known as Poof. He is a man who has been accused of being sexist, and so we're gonna defend him. We've been given the task of defending him. Obviously, we're not sexist here, and even if we lose and he is sexist, that doesn't mean we are. But that's going to be on Stardust's stream. So tune into that if that sounds interesting to you guys. And if that doesn't, that's fine as well. We got more stuff coming up on Monday after that, and hopefully for the rest of the week after that too, and so on and so on. What we're going to do now is, because he was kind enough to host us, we're going to go ahead on right on out into Lethe Waterkai, just so you guys can have some continuity and continue on with that panel. I think that's always fair. And yeah, catch you guys next time.
If,
It's not defamation.
okay, but